Hello, everybody. Welcome to Spirit Gym with Paul Chek. This is my solo podcast, How to Thrive in 2025, which I'm very excited to share with you. And this will give you a sneak peek at some of the contents of Spirit Gym and some of the beautiful art from Vicky Dye, the Spirit Gym artist, who is absolutely amazing, as you will see. In this podcast, I will cover 2024 in hindsight so we can see where we've come from and how that brings us into this new year, 2025. We'll look at the numerology of the year, which is 2025, which means we now enter a year under the influence of the number field 9. And I'll explain what that means in the podcast as I've done in previous years. We'll then look at the archetypal symbology of tarot number 9, which correlates to the 9 year, which is the hermit, and what that suggests for effectively navigating and making the most of the new year, both personally and collectively. Then I'm excited to share an astrological reading of predictions for 2025 from one of my favorite women in the world, Julie Dean Richards, who is a lawyer, a tarot expert, and an astrologer, and I will share a little bit more about my feelings about astrology and what it offers us when we get to that section. I will finish the podcast by sharing the Spirit Gym Practitioner's Credo, and I think when I explain the Credo to you, it's something you're welcome to use in your own life. It's universal. Doesn't matter what religion or belief system you are. So let's look at 2024. That was an 8-year. 2 plus 0 is 2, plus 2 is 4, plus 4 is 8. That's how you do a numerological reduction. The theme of last year was self-reflection. So we're going to look at 2024. I'd like to start by giving you this very profound and very real definition of consciousness by Edward Edinger, MD, a very famous Jungian analyst who wrote many excellent books. He says, consciousness is a psychic substance which is produced by the experience of opposites, suffered not blindly, but in living awareness. Key words are suffered not blindly, but in living awareness. Another key here is consciousness is a psychic substance. That means it's real, it's tangible. We know when we are conscious, we can feel it. When you know, for example, what 2 plus 2 is, it's 4, it's tangible. You're not confused, you're aware of it. It's not diffuse or fuzzy. So when we're conscious about something, there is a tangible sense to it, but we can only be conscious by experiencing the opposites. And as we're all aware, there's plenty of that in the world. And I wore my special Tai Chi shirt today with the Tai Chi symbol on my chest, because that's exactly what that symbol represents, the complementary opposites that create life, consciousness, and all that is or can be known. So as we explore our year in review and 2025, just keep in mind that consciousness is a psychic substance which is produced by the experience of opposites, suffered not blindly, but in living awareness. So let's take a 4-doctor approach to our yearly review, our 2024 review. We're going to start with Dr. Happiness. That's the chief physician, because Dr. Happiness is responsible for identifying what is happy making for you, for developing the values that will support you living in a way that supports your well-being and that of those in your family or those you love or those you share life with. And remember, without values, we have no means of saying yes or no, because your yes has no value until you learn to say no, and you can't do that without values. Now, in his radical new book, titled Radical Wholeness, Ken Wilbur describes the green revolution, which is linked to the world agenda of the World Economic Forum and the globalists. Now, I highly recommend this book. Most of you probably know Ken Wilbur is one of the deepest minds on the planet, has been since he opened his mouth, I think. somebody who I really have a lot of love and appreciation and respect for. And in his book, he really lays out what got us into trouble through the past several years, including Donald Trump's first presidency. And I'm quite sure he was inspired to write the book because of what's going on in the world, but he does a phenomenal job. And I warn you, he pulls no punches, but he does a phenomenal job of describing how it is that Donald Trump, a man who is so feared and hated by so many at the time of the first run for presidency, became president and now has achieved hero status to become president again. And what Ken Wilbur talks about is different value structures, which would be too much to go into now, but the green value structure is egalitarian, equality for everyone. It hates any kind of hierarchy whatsoever. And so, though it's a sort of let's call it a wise and good thing to not control hierarchies where we have globalists, for example, at the top and everybody else is secondary or second class or third class or useless eaters and vermins and sheep, as we're often referred to by them. What Ken Wilbur points out is that they make the huge mistake, the people in the green, which are the ones that were very classically pro-vaccine, pro-Biden, Harris administration, pro-transhumanism, transgender, which is, to me, everyone has the right to have their own desires and beliefs and whatever they want, as long as we're not hurting each other with them. What I wanted to share with you that Ken Wilbur shares that's quite shocking is he cites study after study by psychologists and other researchers looking at surveys of people's perceptions of Donald Trump. And across the board, he was labeled as a sexist, a fascist, a womanizer, and all sorts of negative things. But what Ken Wilbur shows quite shockingly is that the very people that stated all these negative things and even outright hated Donald Trump indeed voted for him. Why? Because Ken Wilbur points out that what he sometimes referred to as, I believe, sick green, if I remember right, has wiped out our value structure. It has ignored the growth hierarchies, such as the growth of consciousness or the importance of the child becoming an adolescent, becoming an adult, becoming an elderly contributor to death. That's a growth hierarchy. We know, for example, that the seed becomes a sprout, becomes a sapling, becomes the tree. That's a growth hierarchy. We go from child to warrior to king or queen to wise man or wise woman in our spiritual evolution, as I'll share later in the presentation. That's a growth hierarchy. So when you wipe out a growth hierarchy, it's like if you can imagine planting a bunch of runner vines, but no runners for them, they cannot climb up. They can't reach toward the sun. It would be like knocking the sun out of the sky. The trees wouldn't know, nor would the plants know which direction to grow. And so this leads to sort of this flattening out of everything, where what you end up with is people that really lose their sense of what direction to grow in, and we don't have a system of hierarchy. So in a sick green system like that, are far less likely to listen to wise elders who have a lot of wisdom to help us through challenging times and to help us have the smarts to prevent challenging times. But instead, the undereducated dope addict on the street has just as much voting power or value as someone who is highly skilled with regard to the situation that a vote may need to be cast. And that can create complete and utter chaos. It would be like a school room with no teacher, and everyone's just doing whatever the hell they want to. The teacher would represent a growth hierarchy. Happiness at the I, we, all level depends on the field of value as Mark Gaffney beautifully reminds us all. I've got several fantastic podcasts with Mark Gaffney. Sorry, I pronounce it Gaffney, but it's Gaffney. He's done several with Aubrey Marcus. He's done a series of them with Kyle Kingsbury on the Kyle Kingsbury Show. All excellent stuff. But really, remember, Dr. Happiness cannot be the doctor of happiness if we don't have values. And the sick green, as Ken Wilbur called it, really wiped out critical values, such as the value of children not being exposed to pornography prior to being of adult age, or the age that we should be exposed to things like that, letting children decide if they're going to have a sex change or get vaccinated well before they're mature enough or conscious enough to make such decisions. That's the kind of values that erode life. You saw Fauci and the government abolishing access to natural health, supplementation, and ways of living, such as being in the sun and being with friends and family, and all the things that we've learned for thousands of years, going all the way back to shamanism, then natural medicine, that were very therapeutic and effective, which we valued because they work, but all of a sudden our value hierarchy is destroyed. But if you respect Ken Wilbur as I do, his book, Radical Wholeness, is quite a shocking wake-up call for all of us. In 2024, we saw a reduction in polarization among people, families, and cultures regarding vaccinations. The world has woken up to the fact that the truth is more important than the illusions being cast by governments, the World Economic Forum, World Health Organization, drug companies, and corporate entities, now of many different factions. These realizations have aided in establishing or reestablishing a common field of values that extends itself to the all, which is all of us. So now that the science has made it through the cracks of censorship and many, many experts have been sharing, we have begun in 2024 to reestablish a field of value. And many people got to look at what happens when you make decisions out of fear, or you follow the herd and you stay in the child archetype and let someone else be your parental authority without questioning whether or not they are actually contributing as a source of growth or a source of destruction, manipulation, greed, etc. And many thanks to people like Joe Rogan, Russell Brand, and many other amazing podcasters who put themselves at great risk to get the wise ones on the air to illuminate us in 2024. In 2024, we saw more war in the Ukraine, Israel, and other regions of the world, unfortunately. Seeing the massive levels of destruction being funded by taxpayers' dollars, with constant reminders of the possibility of a third world war, has helped many deepen their empathy and compassion for others and to realize the importance of protecting the common needs of all people. In 2024, we saw a lot of positive movement on issues of the environment and human health, thanks to RFK's presidential run. All the interviews and talks RFK gave illuminated the need to remove dark, unconscious influences and players from the government. His somewhat surprising alignment with Donald Trump is a blessing because he can be a great balancing force and a source of real education and moral influence for Trump, which I personally feel is very, very important. In 2024, we continued to benefit from many excellent podcasters bringing us a diversity of expert opinions regarding the key issues of today, counterbalancing the social engineering efforts and the censorship of the globalists. There's been a significant increase in the number of people becoming more earth and health conscious, which I so absolutely love seeing. With Dr. Diet, in 2024, we had an onslaught of educational videos regarding the progressive poisoning and destruction of our natural resources, farmlands, topsoil, and food. It appears that President Trump has offered Joel Salatin a position in the government to help revitalize American farming, which is a miracle in itself. And I hold my heart open. And just through RFK and the invite of Joel Salatin, I can see President Trump is actually maturing into a somewhat more sane human being. Let's hope that continues. I'm open-minded. I think no matter how much political gaming is going on, I feel safer with Donald Trump than I would ever with Biden or Harris and that whole sick green agenda. And I could say a lot about that, but I got too much to share, so we'll keep going. Now, it is important to realize that there is no greater influence on the health of your body than the health of your psyche. Everything you do that either produces balance or imbalance within your body has to do with a choice you make, and all choices are the expressions of beliefs, be they conscious or unconscious. And all beliefs and choices come from the domain of the psyche, your inner consciousness, your soul. Psyche means soul in Greek. So we must remember that the mind is part of the psyche. So if your mind is not healthy and your soul is not healthy, your body cannot be any healthier than what informs it. So in 2024, we saw potentially one of the greatest movements towards self-responsibility as massive numbers of people became aware of the importance of taking care of themselves and their children by eating better food and using more natural approaches to healing. Many of them were people that aborted natural health approaches under the influences of Fauci and other dark tricksters. So again, the truth began to rise to the top and people started waking up. And fortunately, more people are being inspired to find local organic farmers, biodynamic farmers, Korean farmers, and people that are using no chemicals or minimal chemicals and producing much safer, more nutritious food. And due to the the hijacking of organic certification, it's hard to trust labels anymore because we don't really know what that means anymore. I've got many videos and lectures on that throughout my YouTube channel and throughout the Chek Institute's teachings. And in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, I go into that quite well. But we've got to pay attention and support the farmers that are caring for the soil and the ecosystems, which are the regenerative farmers, the free-range regenerative organic farmers, the organic and biodynamic farmers that are actually using those principles as they are intended to be used. With regard to Dr. Quiet, in 2024, the stress of world issues, the failure of the medical system and vaccines, and the need for inner stability inspired many people worldwide to re-engage the inner arts, such as meditative practices, Tai Chi, Qigong. Many have come to the realization that the only way to change the world is to change themselves, and that is exactly what the new year is all about as a 9-year.
January is nearly here. Can you believe it? How are you doing with your New Year's resolutions? If you're like most people, me included, you start the year with great goals to exercise more, eat better, get to bed earlier, start a work-in practice or meditate daily, study some personal improvement book or course regularly, and just become a healthier, happier, more evolved human being. But if you're also like most people, within a few short weeks, life gets in the way, and all those good intentions slip away and just seem too hard to accomplish. This is why you need a community to support you and a coach to guide and encourage you. And now you can get both of those when you join the Spirit Gym community. In fact, research shows that people have a 65% chance of reaching a goal if they have an accountability partner. And you can get the support of an entire community of accountability partners when you join Spirit Gym. Now through January 15th, Spirit Gym has special incentives, discounts, and a brand new level of membership to help you make 2025 a standout year. This is the best time for you to join and turn confusion into clarity, uncertainty into purpose, and unfulfillment into true freedom. Go to myspiritgym.com today to get the full details. Whether you opt for the full membership with access to Paul's Master Key online course plus the community, or you decide to join just the community with access to the weekly calls with Paul and his select guests, which are called Sanghas in Spirit Gym, there is a membership option that is right for you. So visit myspiritgym.com and join the growing group of people who are transforming their lives and adopting new freedoms that bring joy, wholeness, and fulfillment.
Let's look at number field basics, or the basis from which the esoteric science of numerology emerges. First, to understand number field basics, we must understand that everything in the universe is made of energy, information, and frequency. If you take everything that's created and say, what are the absolute essentials, or what is the reductio ad absurdum of creation itself, you get to energy, information, and frequency. And that is well borne out in physics and quantum physics. Numerology is an ancient esoteric science that looks at and deciphers the energy and vibration behind numbers as archetypes. Remember, the word archetype means original pattern. It explores the energy, information, and patterns expressed by numbers. Every frequency, for example, is a number. If you listen to 98.1 KIFM, that's a number, and that's a frequency. If you dial someone's phone number, that's a microwave frequency that will make their phone ring because it goes into resonance with their receiver. The sound of your voice is frequency generation. The whole field of cymatics is based on the generation of frequency and shows how energy and information create form in matter. While mathematics expresses the objective aspects of number, numerology expresses the subjective aspects of numbers, such as values, qualities, feelings, and experiences. Emphasis is placed on number archetypes 1 through 9 in numerology because all numbers can be reduced to 1 through 9. For example, if you look at the year 2025, the way you do a numerological reduction to get the master number, which gives you the archetypal energy in any number, is you add the numbers together until you get a total, and then you reduce it to a single digit. But in the case of 2025, we have 2 plus 0 is 2, plus 2 is 4, plus 5 is 9. If it was 29, for example, if your number reduced to 29, then we would do 9 and 2 is 11. 1 plus 1 is 2. So that would reduce down to the number field 2, which is where you would get the seed or core essence of that number and its influences. It all begins with 0, but technically 0 is not a number. It's a symbol for that which is but isn't. 0 is something that transcends number, you could say. But symbolically and in Spirit Gym, my system of holistic spiritual development, 0 represents source, the Tao, unconditional love, because like 0 has no conditions. It's not a this or a that, something, nothing. It's beyond conception. Unconditional love, being unconditional, is beyond conception. And unconditional love represents the unknowable God, which is the highest form of God. If you have any kind of God that is knowable, then you always have to say, well, what created that? And so that can go on infinitely. So 0 is the symbol for the unknowable God, which in Spirit Gym we spell capital G, capital O, capital D, whereas capital G, little o, little d in Spirit Gym is the highest deity in any belief system. There's 12 major world religions, and their views on what God is and what God wants and what God expects and how God will punish you differ significantly, which means they can't be talking about the same God. And look at all the religious wars we have. In fact, in his book, Radical Wholeness, Ken Wilbur states at least 3 times the number one cause of war throughout the history of man has been religious differences. So in Spirit Gym, we transcend the highest power of belief systems and go to the unknowable. And in some religions that is known. This is why in Judaism they don't spell out the word God, and in Buddhism they don't use the word God. They refer to the ground of being to avoid these challenging complications. In my Spirit Gym book series and online mentorship program, which you can see at myspiritgym.com, 0 represents big C, or that which gives birth to phenomena, which would be number, form, time, frequency, yet always remains transcendent to phenomena expressed as number. For example, if you look at an electroencephalogram or electrocardiogram, there's always a 0 reference line. And as you can see on my screen, on your video, there is a sine wave showing positive and negative cycles at different frequencies. And big C is represented by 0, which I call the dance floor in Spirit Gym, because big C is the source of all phenomenon, sort of like the 0-point field is the source of all the undulations of energy that create the quantum foam from which matter is a crystallization, or in the language of consciousness studies, phenomenon or the crystallization of consciousness, all of which emerges from big C. So big C is the ultimate witness. And just like the dance floor, it doesn't do anything, yet it is aware of every single thing that's on it, no matter what you do, walking, laying on it, sleeping on it, dancing on it, backflips. It is aware of it all because any phenomenon emerges from big C, 0, or source, or in my diagram, you see the absolute is the source of the relative. All phenomena represent that which is relative. You can see this same flat line that you see in A with the absolute labeled there. And to the left, you see 0 positive, which means that 0 contains everything that is or anything that's manifest, something positive that's an expression of or manifest in form. And 0 negative, the emptiness of 0, which is the womb of creation. 0 negative would be Shakti in Tantra, and 0 positive would be Shiva in Tantra. Now, on my diagram, you see we have a display of energies and frequencies going from the fastest, which is the infinite, which is spirit, to mind, which is slightly slower than spirit, to AETHER, which metaphysically speaking is the first element of creation, like a stem cell that allows consciousness to manifest as everything and anything, which steps itself down into plasma, then we get into the Aristotelian elements of fire, air, water, and earth. Now, these should be thought of as ranges of vibration, not just the elements such as the earth that you can walk on, or the water you drink, or the air you breathe, or the fire you cook with, but as ranges of vibration. That's how the alchemists actually saw them. So when we're talking about number fields and big C, we're talking about 0 being aware of all that exists within itself, because there's nothing that can exist outside of the absolute or 0 from a metaphysical or spiritual perspective. So just to repeat then, 0 represents big C, or that which gives birth to phenomena, which are number, form, time, and frequency, yet always remains transcendent to the phenomena expressed as number. And so we are talking about the number field 9. So when you take 0, we'll call that translucent light, the light of God consciousness, and put it through a prism, just like you get the colors of the rainbow. If you put white light through a prism, when you shine the metaphorical light of God through the prism of its own ideation or its own dreaming, you end up with number fields, 0 being the womb, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 being how the energy is dispersed, just like you would have colors of the rainbow, for which there are 7. And if you add white as a color that contains them all that we're familiar with, and black as a color that contains them all, you get 9. And all colors have correlations with numbers in field theory. Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching, verse 42, gives us ancient insight into the nature of zero, which correlates in Spirit Gym with the Tao, and the emergence of number fields inherent in creation. The Tao, remember that means zero, gives birth to the one. The one gives birth to the two. The two gives birth to the three, and the three gives birth to the 10,000 things, which means everything. With that said, let's explore the archetypal significance of 2025 as a 9-year to gain some insights on how zero manifests itself within the field of energy and information embodied by the number 9. The key words describing the agency of number 9 as a field of information or influence are creativity, generosity, selflessness, and forgiveness. So again, the key words that describe the type of experiences, the consciousness, and the agency in the number field 9 are creativity, generosity, selflessness, and forgiveness, which suggests exactly what we will need to effectively navigate 2025. Just to help understand what the 9-year represents in the conceptual view of cycles, 2021, again, was a 5-year, which is symbolized by the capstone of the pyramid, number 5 with the crown on it. And we were in the thick of COVID and the challenges that we are all now very familiar with. The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell has been broken down into 3 key phases: the hero's departure, the hero's ordeal, which requires a mentor to learn to deal with these forces so that the hero doesn't get destroyed, and then the hero's return is the 3rd phase. So when we begin a new project, such as building a new home or developing a new piece of technology, we go into Hegel's thesis stage. Thesis means your idea, dream, or goal. And there are 4 stages of development, which is really the planning stages and gathering the materials together and the necessary things to execute the plan. Then we get to the top of the pyramid, number 5. That's the ordeal, and that's where the hero needs the mentor. That's what Hegel calls the antithesis, or the trial stage. And that's where, for example, we've got the materials, and now we're testing our widget, our new special toothbrush, our new battery-powered lawnmower, or whatever it is that we've invented. And we run into the challenges that every inventor does. For example, if you fall in love with someone, that's the thesis. When you get to the work of a real relationship and the sex wears off, you're in the 5 phase, the antithesis, the trial that lets you know whether or not you are just in love with somebody's body or whether you're really in love with them as a person. If you're running a marathon, then stages 1, 2, 3, and 4 would be leading up to the halfway point of the marathon. 5 would be the halfway point. And then 6, 7, 8, and 9 would be the second half of the marathon heading to the finish line, which would be 10, or the rest phase, which would be the beginning of a new cycle. We can see that we are now at the end of a cycle. So we are now, based on a number of different experts, in the final phase of a cycle, which some suggest is the cycle of the great year, or the 25,900-year cycle in which the sun makes one cycle through the Milky Way galaxy. Whenever we're at the end of a cycle, like we are now, the great year, then we have to realize what the word Armageddon means, which means the end of a cycle. It does not mean the end of life unless we choose to embody that story, which is really a literal translation of a biblical myth. On that note, we must remember that there are 4 levels of scriptural interpretation. Houston Smith is the one I first learned this from, who is considered in his lifetime to be the world's greatest expert on world religion. Houston Smith identifies 4 levels of scriptural interpretation, the lowest being literal. And this is where we get our Armageddon philosophy as end of days from. The next level being ethnocentric, which is my group against your group. So ethnocentric would be black people against white people, Christians against Muslims. That's the second level of interpretation, but still very dangerous because it divides people. And paradoxically, these religions, all the monotheistic religions, teach that there's only one God, but somehow they manage to get three completely different religions out of it and war against each other to this very day, sadly. So we have literal, ethnocentric, which is my group against your group. Then we have allegorical, which means if you're conscious enough to read scripture as allegory, you'll see that it's actually teaching stories. It's not literal facts. In fact, Joseph Campbell said, if your Bible is interpreted as a dictation instead of a connotation, you are in deep trouble. And lo and behold, do we have evidence of that? And have we had it for a long time? So point being is that we all need to be aware that higher than literal or ethnocentric interpretation of scripture is allegorical, but that takes one with access to both sides of their brain. You can't read poetry if you don't have both sides of your brain. You have to be able to see the double meanings of the story inside the story. Yet the highest form of scriptural interpretation is inspirational. So those that are most enlightened can read even the Old Testament in the Bible, which is full of nasty stuff, and they can show you that these are stories that are designed to inspire you to remember what happens to people that live in ways that are disrespectful, unloving, race versus race, or color versus color, or religion versus religion, male versus female, etc. So my dream for all of us that read scripture is that we remember the highest level is inspirational, and seeing Armageddon as the end of all existence as we know it is not inspirational at all. And to believe that is to consciously or unconsciously seek to manifest that. And as Ken Wilbur points out, and other psychologists, with 70% of the world population at the child level of psychological development, which equates to adherence to father figures of fundamentalist religion, then we must be conscious that we must transcend these lower levels of childlike thinking and belief to avoid the fundamentalist story of Armageddon as a literal end of humanity. As we will see, this is exactly what the function of tarot archetype number 9, the hermit, is all about, which is how do we do our inner healing work to get clear on what's meaningful and how to love better and how to contribute and how to grow up and become a spiritual adult that's not caught in programming such as cult-like behaviors or unconscious behaviors or isms. Hi, everybody. I'm sure you've heard me bragging about Paleo Valley over the years of listening to my podcast, and there's a very good reason for that. Not only do I love the genius of Autumn Smith, a holistic nutritionist, but her products are phenomenally good. My kids love them, I love them, and we all use them every day. My students love them, my clients love them, and they are absolutely top notch. One of my kids' favorite snacks is Paleo Valley's bone broth in chocolate. They love to make their hot chocolate drink themselves simply by whisking up collagen-rich protein powder in a mug of hot water. And I'm happy to let them indulge, as I know it is packed full of great nutrition for them in the disguise of a sweet treat. Even us big kids love our sweet treats, and isn't it great when we can enjoy something that not only tastes great, but is truly great for us? Paleo Valley's 100% grass-fed bone broth protein is the only of its kind made from truly grass-fed cows raised on pesticide-free grass pastures. It's made from bones, not hides, slowly simmered to extract the proteins and nutrients. Gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and dairy-free, the chocolate mix includes organic coconut milk powder, organic cacao bean, organic monk fruit that makes a sweet, creamy, delicious drink that my kids, family, and friends just can't get enough of. You can also add to smoothies, use it in baking, or mix it with your coffee for a healthy mocha treat. Paleo Valley's bone broth protein is also available in vanilla and unflavored. To try Paleo Valley's excellent bone broth protein and save 15% on your purchase, go to paleovalley.com/lowercase CHEK 15. No promo is required. And I promise you, not only will you love this stuff, your kids will love it. You can giggle and laugh because they think they're getting a sweet dessert right before bed, but they will love it and sleep great. And boy, do we parents love it when our kids sleep great. Enjoy Paleo Valley's amazing products. There's a lot of information. I have numerous books that I study on numerology. As you can imagine, if you try to synthesize everything in the universe, physically, emotionally, and mentally, down into just 9 numbers, each one of them is going to be vast in what it covers, because archetypes are very, very powerful. So my synthesis for this year, 2025, with regard to material matters, material possessions are of secondary importance right now. Losses and achievements come and go, so that you can identify what is of ultimate value in life this year. Your attitude will serve you best if it remains philosophical, spiritual, and detached. Now, some people would say philosophical. What's an attitude that's philosophical? Remember, philosophy, philos, Sophie, means philos, the love of, Sophie, wisdom. So to remain philosophical means to orient yourself toward wisdom, particularly tried and tested wisdom. What's an example of tried and tested wisdom? Well, Confucius gave us the golden rule a very long time ago. He was a very wise man. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That is philosophical wisdom. So when we're looking at ancient truths and being philosophical, it means to hang on to the things that have been passed down generation after generation, because they turn out to have deep truth to them. 9, representing the end of a cycle, suggests that we must embrace what is significant, of ultimate value in life, and prepare to let go of anything that doesn't serve us as we prepare to begin a new cycle in 2026. Because remember, the previous discussion, 9's the end of a cycle, and 10 brings us into a new cycle, but there's generally a rest period where we have to regroup and redream together. So 2026 being the beginning of a cycle, 2025 merging into 2026 could bring us something that makes us all seriously consider whether or not we want to keep creating some of the systems and situations and types of laws or ways of capturing people or ways of living or relating that we have in the past, because they are not serving us. So if you add 2 plus 2, you get 4 plus 6 for 2026. It's 10, which is reduced to 1. 1 plus 0 is 1. That's the beginning of a new cycle. Now, in matters of the self, clear up all outstanding debts and loose ends in 2025. Purge your mind of indulgent emotions, capricious moods, depression, old hurts and obsessions, and settle on one single path with determination, which is exactly the work of the hermit for 2025. To get rid of anything that does not serve your highest good and that of those you share life and love with. Seek self-mastery as an essential process of self-realization. There are 3 levels of selfhood inherent in the self-realization process. The self, small s, small e, small l, small f. That means seek to become whole yourself as an individual. Capital S, little elf means become conscious of all that supports you, from the earth, the water, the warmth and sun that gives us the light for photosynthesis, which gives us food, to the air we breathe, to key relationships such as mother, father, family, friends, co-workers. Look carefully at all that supports you And finally, all caps, capital S, capital E, capital L, capital F, is to come to the conscious realization that what you are is an expression of the whole in the grandest sense of the word. No little self could be here without the self, the earth, for example, which could not be here without the source intelligence, source energy, and source information that creates the divine logos or matrix within which we live and experience life, love, and the challenges that make us grow. Now, 2025, when we look at 9 from the perspective of matters of dangers, beware not to fall in love with yourself and become egotistical, narcissistic, or neurotic. Too much I, too much self-orientation negates the we and all expressions of love. If we're too egotistical, then we may not listen to wise people that are giving us sound advice that could save our lives. If we're too narcissistic, then we're not going to do well in a team, and we need to be conscious of who's on our dream team, from the personal level to the family level to the business level to social level to cultural to world. So being narcissistic, which is a very key quality identified in each of the control oligarchs, identified and exposed by Seamus Bruner in the Control Oligarchs book, and in von Danashiva's book, Oneness versus the 1%, does a very good job of describing narcissism. And then being neurotic is a problem, because that means you're overly oriented towards your little itch, scratch, bump, whether or not your lips look perfect, or etc. Joseph Campbell describes a neurotic as someone who behaves irrationally when they should be behaving rationally, which would also be the archetype of the child. Beware not to become lazy, pleasure-seeking, shallow, and self-centered. We all need to be involved in the conscious creation of ourselves as individuals who embody what the world needs now. We must take responsibility for making the changes we want to see in the world within ourselves and leading others by example, especially younger people. Through your own healing process, you will become someone others can emulate, making the world a better place for all living beings. Again, this aligns perfectly with the hermit archetype as expressed in Tarot 9, which we will explore quite soon here. Looking at the number field 9 with regard to matters of the future, your idealism and compassion can become important contributors to the welfare of friends, family, or even society. As we learn from Arnold Mindell, culture is a bunch of people doing the same things, and it is our responsibility to inspire culture to do the things that will ultimately bring balance and harmony to humanity and between humanity and nature. Ideally, in a 9-year, friendship, love, and affection are the cornerstones that will best support your life as we conclude this cycle. Your recognition and embodiment of friendship, love, and affection for yourself, others, and nature will emerge with conscious awareness and practice, bringing balance and harmony into the world at this time of great need if you do the work of the hermit. God creates souls to experience itself and relationships through which the power of love and intention manifest, inform, and transform. Remember, God, by definition, is that for which there is no other. So God is technically all alone. God is the only being that can create and sustain itself. No other being can do that, not even the devil. The devil came from God, or it couldn't exist. Remember Isaiah 45:7 in the King James Bible says, I create the light and the dark, good and evil. I, the Lord, do all these things, which unfortunately many Christians have a tendency to repress into their unconscious and maintain dualistic thinking and dualistic living, which leads to the kind of battles we see in society with race, color, creed, religion, etc. So again, God creates souls to experience itself and relationships through which the power of love and intention manifest, inform, and transform. So now let's explore tarot archetype number 9, the hermit. Remember, these tarot archetypes called the major arcana for which there are 22 in any tarot deck, are the archetypes that are inherent in the objective psyche, as I will explain. And the 56 other cards in the tarot deck came afterwards, but are late additions to tarot. So for each of the major arcana, this is number 9. All the other 9 cards, which are organized elementally, are expressed as wands, fire, swords, air, cups, water, pentacles or coins, earth, are expressions of the energies contained within the archetype that is the number 1 through 9. Again, the tarot archetypes are inherent to the objective psyche. Jung identified the objective psyche as the archetypes active in the psyche of all human beings. He did this by studying myths and fairy tales from around the world, ancient myths and fairy tales that emerged before these people could have had contact with each other, and found that they were all talking about the same concepts. So Jung calls the objective psyche objective because it has the same archetypes in that all human beings use to make meaning. It is because the tarot archetypes are within our objective psyche that human beings have been fascinated by and engaged in them for a very long time. In fact, there's debate about where tarot emerged from, but in the Law of One, Book 4 by Ra, Law of One by Ra, Book 4, Ra says that the Egyptian culture, or the entity Ra, which was the consciousness of the Egyptians, created the tarot to train priests. And I believe another expert, C.C. Zane, also highlights the origin of tarot as Egyptian, which means it's been around for a very, very long time. Tarot has been engaged, studied, and written about by great thinkers such as Carl Jung, Joseph Campbell, Angeles Arrien, and many, many others. And I have studied the writings of many great thinkers on tarot, and many great thinkers have engaged or do use tarot for a variety of things. The 22 major arcana or archetypes not only are representative of the functions with the human psyche, like numbers on a calculator or alphabets in a language, but describe the path of the soul from the time of becoming human to reaching enlightenment, which can take many lifetimes. The 22 major archetypes of tarot each describe stages of development and processes we each go through en route to self-realization, which means realizing the truth of who we really are and what we really are. They are also functions we use in cognition and relationships to self, others, places, and things. And in this excellent book by Russell A. Sturgis, who I've done a podcast with in the past, Russell Sturgis actually takes you through the 22 major arcana as a path of spiritual evolution. We can look at these 22 major arcana as stages of evolution. Remember, archetypes have a wide variety of applications, so that they can not only be applied to, say, the way you're thinking or relating, but to a larger gestalt, like we're doing here with numerology and the expose of the hermit. Now, before we explore the hermit, which is archetype 9 in tarot, let's review the preceding archetypes and what they represent so that we can understand the hermit archetype within the context of the new year. All the other double-digit numbers are reduced down to one of these core archetypes. So you could say these are the seed archetypes out of which all the double-digit archetypes emerge. If you have tarot number 17, the star, 1 and 7 is 8. The star would be born from the archetype of strength. So I will now share from the perspective of tarot as a path of spiritual evolution what each of these preceding cards represent. And as a side note, for example, last year, the year we've just completed, 2024, was an 8-year. 2023 was a 7-year. 2022 was a 6-year. 2021 was a 5-year. 2020 was a 4-year. So you can go back in the years and see what stage of development we were at in our own psychological or spiritual or conscious development within each year. And of course, these cycles repeat. There's lots about the repeating cycles from the yugas of Hinduism. And you see it in our own planet revolving around the sun cyclically, but yet every cycle we're in a different location in space and in relationship to the 12 major archetypes or zodiacs. So even though we're repeating the same cycles, we're getting slightly different experiences because we're at a different place and time in the relationships that make up the cosmos and the psyche itself. So we begin with the Fool. The Fool represents God dreaming itself into existence as a human being. It represents birth. Remember, if God is God, then there can be nothing else here. Everything comes from source. Said another way, if God was cookie dough, then everything in the universe would be some variation on the theme cookie dough. God as prime source is the source of all that exists, including all sentient beings, all places, all things, and the experience of time itself. So the Fool represents the beginning of the journey, or a soul coming into its self-expression as a human being. Number one, the Magician represents both the matrix of God's self-reflection and mind, which occurs through relationship. The Magician, all the tarot archetypes can be male or female, though, for example, the Magician looks masculine on the card. If you're using tarot and you draw the Magician and you're a woman, then the Magician is a female in context or relationship to you as the person drawing the card. She, as the Magician, or he, represents our capacity to become conscious and use the magic, M-A-G-I-C, and M-A-G-I-C-K, powers of our mind to co-create with God or Source. M-A-G-I-C is always magic created by sleight of hand or the production of an illusion. M-A-G-I-C-K is natural magic, which is what alchemy is all about, such as fermenting a vegetable like cabbage to become more nutritious and more vital through natural principles, which is M-A-G-I-C-K, or the making of natural medicines. Now, when we talk later about Lucifer, Lucifer is the generator of M-A-G-I-C, which is necessary because it's Lucifer that, in that myth of Lucifer, one of the key myths of Lucifer, that is responsible for creating the matrix without which God could have no self-reflection. And tarot is describing the matrix, just like the movie The Matrix, there's a matrix. And so the tarot major arcana and minor arcana are describing the nature of the matrix. You can see on the Magician's table a coin, a sword, a cup, and a wand. Those represent the elements of creation. The wand represents fire, or the highest vibration, which represents God's desire. Well, the next level down would be air, which represents mind, or logos, the plan of creation and the use of mind. To think, we have to cut out of the whole. If I say look at the black cat, I mean don't look at the white cat. So the sword is an ancient representation of the mind, because mind must cut out or we can't make sense of anything. Cups represents love and emotion, and the coins represent anything physically tangible, such as our body, our home, or a place, and also money. Notice that half the table in the image is missing, and that's because there's 4 elements to creation. You're seeing the half of the table that relates to water and earth, which are physically tangible, but air or mind is invisible. We don't see our thoughts unless we're clairvoyant. And fire or spirit is invisible, but it is spirit and mind that are animating, moving, orchestrating, creating, and forming matter. And it is matter that dissolves back into mind and spirit. So the Magician is showing you that half of the creative intelligence and impulse is invisible, and he's holding one hand up with a double-ended healing wand and one hand down, which is the alchemical principle, as above in your mind, you're dreaming, so below in your tangible realities. And around the magician is a bunch of flowers and foliage, which means if we do magic intelligently and with love, we grow life. If we do black magic, then we're destructive and we destroy life, which is evil. Evil is Live backwards. And so evil is any act that is against life or immoral, moral being supporting life. So first, the fool is born, then it is given a mind. It progressively develops the mind throughout its life, but it starts by indoctrination and getting a mind from its caregivers, parents, family, educators, etc. 2, the high priestess represents the soul within each human being and the deep wisdom contained within each soul, which it has access to consciously or unconsciously, so that it can use the wisdom gained in each previous lifetime to do better at self-realization in each successive lifetime. 3, the Empress represents the divine as mother or all mothering. 3, the Empress represents the unrational feeling and intuitive nature within each of us. So even though it shows a female that's pregnant sitting on a chair in her garden holding a healing wand, if a man was to draw that card, it might relate to how is he doing at mothering himself, or is he supporting his wife with her mothering challenges? So these cards can be applied universally between males and females if you understand how to apply them. 4, the Emperor represents the divine as father. It represents fathering, the rational, logical perspective on things, mastering our ability to create with the 4 elements, and developing our kingdom. The Emperor rules his kingdom. So the Emperor is the master of creating in the 4 elements, and it's the father that gives us the rational, logical approach as one side, and mom gives us the unrational feeling and intuitive approach. Now, a key note to this point, the Fool, 0, has entered the matrix of life and is developing its own mind, which is 1, the magician, and has a soul that is also developing through our life and evolving. Number 2, the high priestess, and is the child of a mother. Number 3, the empress, and a father. Number 4. So what you're seeing in the evolutionary process of tarot as archetypes is embodiment, gaining a mind, being born through a mother and a father, and learning how to navigate in the place and time of your birth for your own spiritual evolution. The fool or child at this point is still unconscious and needs the guidance, support, and education provided by its parents, family, and teachers. The fool is receiving an unconscious indoctrination, so it knows how to engage the matrix, which in Spirit Gym is Spirit Gym itself, for its own evolution in this lifetime. Remember, a child is largely unconscious for the first 5 years of its life, and we could say up to 7 years before it starts to really become conscious. But most of the programming that has the deepest influence on any of us, for better or worse, comes in the first 5 to 7 years of our life, while the child is still quite unconscious compared to what it's capable of as it evolves, as it ages and learns more and grows spiritually. Hi, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the show. I imagine you know that magnesium is one of the minerals that people in North America are the most deficient in, but it's an extremely important mineral to have in your diet regularly. And believe it or not, Bioptimizers has improved what was already well known to be the best magnesium formula out there, called Magnesium Breakthrough. So I've got Wade Lightheart with me to explain what it is they've done to improve this already excellent formula. Wade, what is new about your new Mag Breakthrough formula?
Well, it's called sucrosomial magnesium. So we have 7 different types of magnesium in Magnesium Breakthrough because they're uptaken by different parts of the body. But a new type of magnesium has been created called sucrosomial. And what it shows in the research in science is that it's actually even more absorbable by the body, particularly inside of the brain, which is a big aspect to enhance neurotransmitter formation, as well as ensuring the rest and relax response in the nervous system that a lot of people will take magnesium for. They find it, clocks them down, helps them sleep better, allows for the relaxation of striated and smooth muscle tissue in the body, which creates an energetic relief. And so when we added sucrosomial, we were able to demonstrate inside our lab facility that we were able to get better improvements. Of course, we have a partnership with the Birch International University. We have some patents we're working on, which will kind of relay some of these things. But sucrosomial was a no-brainer when we added to the formula, improved the results or improved the uptake. And the reports back from our testing team were like, wow, we get more results with less caps. And that's always the goal for our company.
That's excellent. I love it. I always say, and people have probably heard me say it before, I'm so amazed how you guys are constantly and always improving and working your best to not only make better products for us, but it doesn't seem to me that it gets more expensive as you make them better. So that's a real gift to the world. Thank you.
Bioptimizers offers Living 4D with Paul Chek listeners 10% off Magnesium Breakthrough and all their other products. Plus, there are always amazing gifts with purchase. So to grab yours, go to bioptimizers.com/living4D and use the promo code Paul10 when you check out. That's bioptimizers.com/living, the number 4D, and the discount code is Paul10.
Then we get to 5, which is a very important evolutionary marker for each individual. That is the Hierophant. The Hierophant is the great guide, guru, teacher, master, priest that has mastery at 3 levels. So in the image you see there's 3 levels to the crown: body at the bottom, spirit or mind in the middle, and spirit above. And then his scepter also has that 3-level structure: body, mind, and spirit. So a hierophant is someone who is well educated and developed, not only in one area, such being a master of welding or stonework or building or quantum physics, but someone who is well developed and well-rounded or holistic in all 3 levels: body, mind, and spirit. So with regard to the Hierophant, the child now goes through puberty. It begins rejecting parental ideals and programming and is developing its own ego. The Fool's big question now is, who am I? So once you get to the stage of development of the Hierophant, the Fool is now becoming a teenager and starting to question, who am I? Not who does my mom and dad want me to be, but who am I really? The Fool, as a budding adult, has big questions that are unanswered by mother and father and seeks its own tribe within which it can gain a sense of identity. Examples are religions, cults, clubs, associations, the military, etc. So it starts looking for an extended family out of the house that allows it to have the support to gain its own sense of identity, which is the path of each soul to figure out. It's inherent within the soul, but because of our programming, we're often given a choice, consciously or unconsciously, to either follow our head and external influences or follow our heart and our own internal guidance system. And the more evolved a soul is, the more capable it is of following its inner guidance, even if it brings conflicts with parents, teachers, and influencers. Life away from the support and control of mother and father comes with some real challenges, and the Fool now seeks a Hierophant to answer its questions and help it resolve the pain and guilt of its own transgressions. So by now, in a Christian sense, we'll have all had plenty of sins to deal with, and that will be based on whatever your programming is, whether you're a Christian, a Buddhist, a Muslim, an atheist, an agnostic, whatever. We all have our own sense of right and wrong, should and shouldn't, etc. And so at this point, when the Fool craves the guidance of a Hierophant, there's plenty of inner challenges and pains to try to reconcile, which requires the wisdom of a skilled guide or master. Then we get to Tarot 6, the Lovers, which is one of the toughest archetypes. So those that are born in the path of 6 in Tarot, which you can find out by doing a numerological reduction on your own birth date. And if it reduces to 6, that means your soul path is that of the Lovers, and you're here in this lifetime to learn to deal with the polarities inherent in love, which are significant and challenging, as most of you have figured out. So at this stage of development, the Fool as a young adult is confronted by the challenges and polarities inherent in love, which are the polarities essential to the development of consciousness, such as good and evil, light and dark, male, female, more, less, mine, yours, should, shouldn't, rich, poor, sex and abstinence, truth and lies, facts and illusions, self, other, etc. So these are all the things, these polarities are inherent to the creation of consciousness and the making of meaning. Light has no meaning without dark, good has no meaning without evil, male without female. So we have to have this undulation of polarities or these complementary opposites, which is why I began with Edward Edinger's description of consciousness as a psychic substance produced not blindly, but in living awareness of opposites. And there are some of the key opposites. And I cited Isaiah 45:7, which shows from a scriptural perspective that God says, I create the light and the dark, good and evil. I, the Lord, do all these things, without which God cannot be conscious of itself, which would mean that the concept of God would have no meaning anyhow. So the Fool as a young adult realizes that love can be much more challenging than it ever realized. The pains inherent in gaining practical experience with love can be debilitating, but pain is the great teacher and quickener of consciousness. In Spirit Gem, I call that aspect of our lives the pain teacher. All pain is there to awaken, make us more aware, to quicken our consciousness, and to facilitate our own evolution and help us not keep doing things that are potentially destructive or even immoral because they hurt self or other. So Tarot 6 is quite a jump up. And again, the Hierophant is needed for help because these are, as we all know, not easy things to figure out. And there's a lot of different belief systems and opinions. So as you will see as we go, you got to get deeper into yourself or you can get lost in beliefs. And that has a lot of challenges that come with it. Next, we come to the Chariot. The Chariot archetype or card in Tarot shows a picture of a man that looks like a warrior dressed in battle armor, standing in a chariot with two sphinxes in the Rider-Waite depiction. On the right hand, you have the female black sphinx representing the feminine polarity of consciousness or yin. On his left, he has the white masculine, which represents yang as a polarity of consciousness or the two polarities of creation. The chariot has no rigging. It only has one axle and two wheels, so the charioteer must stay balanced. The Fool now realizes that it takes discipline to manage itself in most any relationship in which love is expressed and experienced. For example, the love of sex, work, play, alcohol and drugs, money, people, food, the need for attention, education and study, the use of power, having freedom, etc. These are all ways we can either create education, wisdom, positive life experiences, abundance, or get ourselves in trouble. The Chariot symbolizes the need to stay balanced in order to fulfill key relationships and responsibilities and to protect what is theirs as well as his or her people. And in the image behind the Chariot is what looks like a city or a castle, which represents the people that the charioteer representative of and or is protecting. The Fool as charioteer must develop the spiritual armor to protect itself from the powers of its own ego mind and that of others, or distraction and incompletion is very likely. So to restate that, the armor on the charioteer isn't battle armor like you would wear going into battle. It is the armor of protection against your own unconscious programming, your own negative valuations and judgments of others. It is protection against your own childhood programming. It's protection against disempowering belief systems, cults, and isms to help keep you centered. On the front of the chariot is a circle, which represents wholeness with a pair of wings, a symbol of the soul. And there is a picture of the lingam and yoni, which is the sex organs. And that is one symbol for God, because wherever you have the male and the female merging, you have the production of new life. So these ancient symbols are pretty deep. Above the charioteer's head is a canopy, which is a canopy of curtains painted with stars. The canopy represents the veil of the matrix, the illusions created by Lucifer, within which God's self reflects. But because the charioteer has the curtains open, it means he's enlightened enough now to begin to see through a lot of the illusions. And that's why he must wear spiritual armor, so he does not get caught in the illusions being generated by what will later be known as Lucifer and Ahriman, as two examples that I will share toward the end of the podcast. So by the time we get to 7, we're dealing with some, real challenges, real life experiences, and then conscious awareness of, hey, I've got to make an effort to balance myself, or these polarities inherent to consciousness can eat me alive, which we all know happens. Episode 250, Lucifer, Christ, Ahriman, expands greatly on the chariot archetype and its vital importance in this time of our collective evolution. Next, we get to Tarot 8, Strength. You see a picture of a woman wearing a white gown with a belt made of flowers and greenery, which represents supporting life. She's bending over, petting a lion. She's got an infinity symbol above her head, which means the divine within. She represents the soul nature. She would be the high priestess and the mother merged into one, high priestess being the soul, mother being the feminine principle. The lion is an alchemical symbol for the ego. And so she's petting this lion and about to pull its mouth open by the look of her hand positioning on the card. And the symbol on the card represents love always overpowers fear. It is stronger than the need to control people or abuse people or even oneself. So it's a symbol that represents that the safest way to navigate life is from the heart or guidance of the soul, not the ego. And that when the lion lets go to the love of the soul, then it's far less likely to end up being a stuffed animal on some hunter's wall, which is all symbolic of the fact that the ego can only carry us so far before it creates so damn many problems that we either want to kill ourselves to get out of the matrix of life, or we go into a midlife crisis, a depression, or a dark night of the soul. So again, the fool is now faced with a challenging reality, regardless of what subject or issue it is confronted with. The experts on either side of the issues are contradictory, and the fool does not know what to do. So no matter what you look into, is hot water therapy good for me? Is cold water therapy good for me? Are natural remedies good for me? Is ivermectin good for me? ... You have experts on both sides with diametrically opposed viewpoints, even though they're equally qualified. And that is exactly the kind of situation in which Steiner says our awareness soul is born. And that happens when the fool begins to honestly ask itself, is it really true? And does the work to discern what is ultimately true for him or her. Now, there's a lot of truths for others. For example, everybody that writes diet books, whether it be a fruitarian, a keto, meat only, a vegan diet, these are all the things that work for them, but they make the mistake of assuming that what works for them is universally applicable. And we can see that those diet books haven't done a damn bit of good, because look at the world. We've got more obesity, diabetes, and bodily illness than ever, even though we've got more diet books written by experts than ever in the history of man. And most of them contradict each other, which is why my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, teaches you how to eat for your own individual needs and recognize the signs and symptoms of when something's working for you or not, be it milk, butter, grains, ... Ego formation, now further along, the fool has created enough pain to realize the fallibility of the ego. The quest to know thyself deepens and a hunger for legitimate spiritual development begins. This is the point in someone's life where they realize the ego is just not a good driver. And it keeps producing problems like marriages that fall apart, jobs or, partnerships that break up, careers that end, entrepreneurial enterprises that crash. We're all familiar with these things. So there's a hunger for legitimate spiritual development that begins at this stage of our development. And there is a conscious or unconscious desire to be guided from the place of wisdom within, which is one's own spirit soul. So the big question is, how do I find and learn to trust my own soul, which is God within? Only God can give a soul. Soul is consciousness within. Remember, God in my spirit gym model is big C, the source of consciousness and that which is witnessing the phenomena of its own dreaming and creation, which is everything in existence or spirit gym. So again, the question at this level of development, number 8, which is where we were at in 2024, is how do I find and learn to trust my own soul or God within? That brings us right to the hermit, where we're at now in 2025. The fool is now an adult with enough life experience, unresolved pain, and a sincere desire to answer the big questions of the hermit. The hermit is one who isolates themselves for mastery, as we will learn through our exploration here. But the big questions of the hermit are, who am I? Why am I here? How can I create true freedom in my life? What is my role here? And how can I fulfill my life path in a way that is meaningful and gives me a sense of purpose? How can I love myself, others, and live without hurting so much? What is my unique genius, and how can I add value to the world by being here? And most importantly, being who I authentically am. To find your soul, use your heart to feel what you know. To find your soul, use your heart to feel what you know. The very best thing you can do is direct your consciousness to your heart whenever you're facing a challenge or a question, and ask your heart, what do I do now? And see which answer you come up with, or you have as an intuitive arising, or an unconscious arising, or a gut instinct, or a gut sense, or feel, actually leaves you feeling that that is the best expression of your highest self or your love. And that is almost always the right direction to go, even if it upsets other people. Love does not do things that ultimately lead to a loss of freedom or control of others. Love ultimately wants everyone to get along and to realize themselves as part of the one, Great Spirit, Tao, God. Now, it's important to for all of us to realize that we are the world. None of us can be here without the world. Your body is made of water. 99.99 something percent of the molecules in your body by molecular count are water, and water is an element of the earth. We breathe air. We have to be here to breathe it. We have to eat food from the earth. Fire, we all need the warmth of the sun. We all need a healthy metabolism. That's the fire element in alchemy. And fire represents God's dreaming, its desire to manifest and experience itself in relationships, which is the basis of love. So the hermit is aware that right now we're on the brink of a third world war. Einstein was once asked how the third world war would be fought, and he said something quite profound. He said, I don't know, but the fourth world war will be fought with sticks and stones. If that penny hasn't dropped for you yet. What he's saying is we have so much nuclear power and so much destructive weaponry that if a third world is fought, it'll throw us back into the dark ages, and any fourth world war will be fought with sticks and stones. And most of us know how deep and wise Einstein was, and we should pay very, very close to the deep truth of what he was stating, because he was very much inside and entangled with all the issues that led to the development of nuclear weapons and energy sources. The hermit is aware that natural resources are running out. We cannot survive with extractive capitalism. It sounded good and it worked good for a while, but we're killing the planet with it. The hermit is aware that the same technology we're using to destroy ourselves and the planet can be used to heal ourselves and the planet if we choose to do so, and that is a fact. You can destroy people with iPhones or you can help them. You can destroy people with food or you can feed them. You can destroy people with chemicals and drugs, or you can use them medicinally and intelligently and help them heal. So no matter which way you go, the very technology that's destroying life on this planet and human beings and families and children can be used with heart intention and what is best for all to produce the solutions we need now. The hermit is aware that governments and government agencies cannot be trusted. The hermit is aware that our tax dollars are not only being used against us, but to fund atrocities around the world. The hermit is aware that thousands of years of religion have not made us more moral, loving beings, and that the second coming of Christ will be an individual spiritual process, not the arrival of a savior, which would keep us in the child archetype, needing an external daddy figure. Religion fills the world with fear and divides people. Spirituality fills the world with empathy, compassion, love, and brings man and nature together as one. Now, authentic religion is indifferent. Not indifferent in the negative sense, but it is not different from spirituality because it's based in love. And the word religion comes from the root word religio, which means to link back or to unite to, which is exactly what the word yoga means. And just to show you how confused people can get with religion, right down the road from me, where my office used to be in Encinitas, California, there was a massive lawsuit between the Christians and the yogis because one of the schools, elementary schools in Encinitas, California, brought yoga instructors in to teach yoga to the children because they found it helped them with problems like attention deficit issues and behavior issues. But a bunch of Christians got together and sued the school for bringing yogis in, claiming that they were forcing the kids to practice religion. But technically religion, yoga is not a religion. You could say it's a philosophy or a way of living. But this is exactly the kind of religious confusion that comes from literal and ethnocentric interpretations, not allegorical or inspirational. And unfortunately, as Ken Wilbur points out at great length in Radical Wholeness, we have about 65 to 70% of the world population still stuck at this level of development because these people often go to churches and need somebody else to tell them what to do, which is the archetype of the Hierophant. So these are the kinds of things that the hermit is coming face to face with in 2025. Many people will come to this realization if they have not already. Hi, everybody. I sure hope you're enjoying the podcast. You know, a couple of months ago, Organifi sent me a couple of bags of their new Shilajit gummies to sample, and I was blown away with how great they taste and how much my body loved them. Having used Shilajit paste for many years, I've never been a big fan of the taste of it, but when I tried Organifi's new Shilajit gummies, I was truly impressed. The texture and consistency of the gummies is excellent, and they have just enough natural sweetness to let me feel like I'm getting a lovely, healthy treat for both my mind and my body. Shilajit is a unique, potent mineral paste from the Himalayan mountains. It contains an abundance of trace minerals, antioxidants, organic acids, and nutrient-transporting compounds. It's been known throughout history to help boost vitality and strength. Just pop a couple gummies and chew, or suck on them slowly for a steady release of the delicious, earthly, but slightly sweet natural flavor. Your taste buds will enjoy the delicious treat while your body soaks up the massive amounts of feel-good nutrition. Rich in fulvic acid, humic acid, vitamins, enzymes, bioflavonoids, antioxidants, metabolites, and over 40 trace minerals, Sheila J. gummies can help support energy production, support performance and recovery, support healthy muscles, promote collagen synthesis, support healthy hormone levels, increase cellular energy, decrease fatigue, and promote heart health. I absolutely love Organifi's Sheila J. gummies and went through 2 bags in no time because my body craved them so much. I reached out to Organifi to get more right away, and I bet you will too. To get your 20% off for Living 4D listeners on your Sheila J. gummies, go to Organifi, Organifi.com/CHEK20. On checkout, use the promo code capital C, capital H, capital E, capital K 20. That's Chek 20 on checkout to get your 20% discount on your awesome Sheila J. gummies. I honestly love these things. I know you're going to be just amazed with how great they taste and how good they feel. The hermit is aware that the world's most powerful people are largely psychopathic and care only for their own gain, regardless of what the cost is. And they are the carriers of the negative polarity. Ra speaks about this at great length in the Law of One series by Ra, which I highly recommend if you want a really deep, profound set of books. Now, those that carry the negative polarity are the ones that bring challenges to us without which, unfortunately, we would not grow. I mean, if it was all Mai Tais and movies and Dunkin' Donuts and cake and dancing, everybody would just be too complacent and they wouldn't grow. So remember, Isaiah 45:7 says, I create the light and the dark, good and evil. I, the Lord, do all these things, because God has got to have experience of the light and the dark, or it cannot know itself. God cannot escape the realities of its own dream and therefore its own creation. And that is the means by which God realizes itself. That which is unconditional cannot be conscious of unless it dreams conditions into existence. To know something is a condition. To gain wisdom requires experience, which comes with trial, error, successes, and failures. And the synthesis of experience is wisdom. So wisdom, Sophia, is the synthesis of God's own experience throughout existence, which is infinite. And because God is infinite, it will take an infinite amount of time for God to ultimately experience all of its possible potentials. So we're in this for the long haul. And James Karsh really breaks this out beautifully in his book, Finite and Infinite Games, when he defines the difference between finite game players, which the globalists are, clearly. Finite game players want to win at the expense of other people, and they want the game to end so they can have a title and control. But infinite players don't care if they win or lose. Their interest is to keep the game going. And so that's the difference. The book, Finite Infinite Games, is one of the most powerful books I've ever studied. It's not a long book, but it is loaded with very, very deep, true statements that will take you deep into meditation. So again, they are the ones that rototill the soil of humanity to keep us growing. Remember, pain quickens consciousness. The hermit is aware that physicians worldwide have forgotten the Hippocratic Oath. The hermit is aware that we are getting sicker and dying of chronic diseases at younger and younger ages. The hermit is aware that it is very hard to change a man's belief system when his paycheck depends upon it. So even any one of us that's a hermit has to come face to face with, where are we evading our own moral code to make money? And what is the ultimate cost to nature and to humanity if we keep doing it? Whatever the ego seeks at the expense of morality is sure to invite conflict. And one of the things that is most dangerous is any ism or belief system, whether it be the medical or medicalization, scientism, religion, indoctrination through various school systems, the military, etc. The hermit is aware that the corporations creating artificial intelligence are spying on us constantly as a means of training their AI systems, yet they do not realize that AI will only mirror humanity back to itself. So we have to ask, how has that worked so far? They're training the most powerful form of technology ever to be released onto humanity. Well, it's not nearly morally prepared for that much power, just like nuclear weapons. And they're using you and me and everybody from the most unenlightened and most dangerously lost to the very few that are awake and aware to train these systems that are ultimately going to be used to control everything in your life, including you. So when you use a very broken down, psychologically and spiritually lost population to train AI, you probably want to sit under a tall tree and ask, well, where does that point us to? And how has that worked so far? And this is all a product of what is called scientism, which is an excessive deference to claims made by scientists or an uncritical eagerness to accept any result described as scientific. Sound familiar? Also includes the concept of a scientific ego. Only science has the right to describe the world around us, what you should or shouldn't eat, whether God is real or not, and the list is very, very long. Scientism is the fanatical egocentricity of scientism, and it takes on many aspects of religious fundamentalism. And if you look at the books and listen to my podcast with James Tunney, he's written several books splitting scientism, transhumanism, and transgenderism, and he makes it very, very clear scientism is extremely dangerous, and it is more dangerous today than it's ever been. The hermit is aware that our education systems are indoctrination systems that teach people what to think, not how to think. The hermit is aware of so much more that the hermit must go within to find all the broken parts of humanity within himself or herself and begin healing them on an individual basis, which is what this year as a 9 years suggests we will have to do to navigate what we have all created unconsciously together. To complete the process of individuation, becoming a spiritual adult, which means one who accepts responsibility for themselves, who says what they mean and means what they say, one who accepts responsibility for what they create in the world, the hermit will have to do the work of going within and committing themselves to a legitimate spiritual practice. In 2025, the year of the hermit, we are each being called to do the work of an individual. We have to do our personal, professional, and spiritual evolution on our own in isolation, not being told by mommy and daddy figures and experts out of books what's true, but to find our heart and use our heart to feel what we know. The fool now realizes that nobody is going to save them or the world. They must do the work of realizing and saving themselves. One who changes themselves for the better changes the world for the better. Lao Tzu told us exactly that a very long time ago. The hermit realizes that it is only through the heart that efforts to heal are productive. As the hermit's heart opens, there is tremendous empathy and compassion, because the hermit realizes that his or her pain and challenges are common to many in the world. We are not alone in our healing process. Andrews Boyd rightly says, compassion hurts. When you feel connected to everything, you also feel responsible for everything, and you cannot turn away. Your destiny is bound with the destiny of others. You must either learn to carry the universe or be crushed by it. You must grow strong enough to love the world, yet empty enough to sit down at the same table with its worst horrors. That is a perfect description of the work of the hermit. But that's where we're all at. I mean, if you really pay attention to those words, anyone who's spiritually awake even a little bit knows compassion hurts when you feel connected to everything. Continuing with the hermit's work, keep in mind, again, that a culture is a bunch of people doing the same things. all the deception, lies, illusion generating, coercion, manipulation, greed, materialism, scientism, medicalism, sexism, racism, religious dogmatism, warring, destruction of nature, etc., all represent a departure from the heart at all levels. We must remember that love is a boomerang. Whatever we put out comes back, and we have to deal with it. You cannot hide from that reality. The unquestioned mind suffocates the soul, leaving it susceptible to isms. Joseph Campbell, Carl Jung, Marci Eliade, and others that were experts in mythology and psychology and related fields said that whenever a culture's myth breaks down, isms pop up all over, and that is extremely dangerous. Socrates said the unquestioned life is not worth living, and that is very, very true. And the thing you need to be aware, in my opinion, is that all isms are essentially cults where there's a mommy or a daddy figure which children flock to when they aren't capable of having enough adult discernment and agency and love capacity to take responsibility for their own actions using their own mind and asking what is true from their own heart without the unconscious programming of religious ideology. And so the hermit reaches the point where they realize that all this childhood programming, all this social programming is actually not only a source of destruction within itself and confusion and pain, but can see that in order for the world to heal, it must do its work to get enough clarity and become conscious enough to help inspire others to wake up to the fact that love is a boomerang and we must experience whatever we put out. So continuing with the hermit's work, before he reached enlightenment, Prince Siddhartha had to confront Mara, the evil deity. And only when he was able to confront Mara successfully did he become the Buddha, the awakened one. After being baptized by John the Baptist, Jesus fasted for 40 days and nights in the desert and was tempted by the devil. That's the work of the hermit. Again, these stories tell us exactly what the hermit represents within the context of achieving enlightenment, which simply stated means to be awake. That's exactly what the Buddha said. People ran into the Buddha after he had achieved enlightenment. They would say, "You're different. Are you enlightened?" And he said, "No, I am awake." I encourage each of you to ask yourself, can we afford to not be awake and do our part as individuals to bring heart and harmony into the world at this time? Carl Jung says, "He who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside awakes." And that is the function of the hermit. The intention of our highest self is to help us differentiate illusion from reality so that illusion doesn't become your reality. The work of the hermit is to make deep, authentic, honest connection with their soul, which is the feeling, experiencing aspect of the self, and the highest self, which is the spirit. The highest self is the image of you as the perfected being, of one as capable of expressing the God potential manifest within each of you and each of us as a soul. So your highest self is that aspect of you projected into the future that has reached full enlightenment and fulfillment. And that is the point of departure of the soul where God dreams each of us into existence. So the point at which you emerge from God as a worker for God, Ram Dass, God worker, as an expression of the divine with your unique potentials, your unique genius. The highest self is that point that is still connected directly to God. And in metaphysics, that represents the causal body or the source of our own beginning, which, if we come full circle, after we go through the tarot, the cycle of the 22 archetypes, you get to number 21, the world, and she shows you a opening, which is a big wreath, and that represents the gateway out of the illusions into the truth of God, which you can only get through when you've healed all the illusions within yourself and can see clearly and let your heart be your guide. The hermit is one who comes to the realization that to achieve mastery, they must commit themselves to a period or periods of isolation. From a spiritual perspective, the task of the hermit is to be fully present with all the thoughts, words, and deeds that do not ultimately represent acts of love, responsibility, authenticity, and one's highest self. We must remember that the challenge for every personality is not to become someone else. Our programming, what we call our ego, is really a collection of other people's ideas that have been programmed into us or that we've memorized or learned in school. And so if you start looking into the actual history of humanity and what we're being told, for example, that Egyptian pyramids were built by people rolling up 10 to 100-ton blocks of stone on wooden rollers made out of Egyptian cedar, which is soft wood, we're being told a lot of absolute silliness and getting university degrees for believing it. So we need to be very conscious that to become capable of expressing our authentic genius as a soul, as an individual expression of the divine, we've got to be conscious of not becoming someone else, because that's the domain of the child, to take on somebody else's persona, mommy and daddy, your favorite action hero, whatever it might be. The hero cannot be the hero until they become who they truly are. This is why Joseph Campbell, speaking of the hero's journey, said, if you get to the forest and see a path, do not take it. You must carve your own path, or you will not become an authentic individual. And this is what Jung called the individuation process, to become whole as an individual. The light emanating from the hermit's lantern symbolizes the light of Christ consciousness, Buddha nature, truth, good, beauty, and love. The body of the lantern, the lampshade, collects soot, which is the dross of human programming, illusion, fear, deceit, jealousy, resentment, disingenuous, and anything that doesn't represent one's capacity to live and love fully and express their innate genius in and for the world and life as a whole. Sufi mystics such as Rumi call this essential work of healing polishing the mirror of the heart. That, again, is the work of the hermit. The hermit knows that the ego is forever trying to prove itself. The soul is forever willing to surpass itself to embody the greatness of its very being. And that's what real spiritual development is all about. To use the ego as a gift of the soul, to use the knowledge that we've been able to acquire that is still truly functional and dream affirmative and life affirmative, but to transcend the ego as our guide and our filtration system to embodying the wisdom of the soul. The hermit's staff represents the wisdom accumulated from inner healing and spiritual growth, which supports him or her in the progressive climb to enlightenment, which is what all mountains in tarot symbolize. So whenever you see a mountain in a tarot archetype or card, it has something to do with the hard work, the climb to enlightenment. The background in the tarot number 9 shows a sky that isn't sky blue, but has the look of water, which symbolizes the unconscious mind. The hermit becomes aware of any programming, unhealthy desires, or unchecked animalistic urges, judgments, or deviations from the heart by being quiet and observing the contents of the unconscious, which is what meditation's all about. You stop thinking and start witnessing. And anytime we watch the puppet show in our head, we will see all sorts of crazy shit passing on the screen of our mind, from judgments against self to judgments against others to victim behavior to saboteur behavior to child behavior, etc. And that's why meditation is so important, because we can see what's in our unconscious, which is largely programmed in when we were in unconscious states as children, or when we made ourselves unconscious by being hypnotized by cults, hypnotized by television and social media, hypnotized by education systems, hypnotized by organizations, etc. As the hermit, one doesn't judge or diminish oneself because of past actions or the uprising of base contents within the unconscious. The hermit holds their highest intentions for themselves and humanity within their mind's eye. The very act of witnessing shines light the light of the hermit's highest intentions and love into all that arises. This immediately makes the unconscious conscious and changes the contents. Just as pouring more water into a large container half full of muddy water begins to dilute and purify it, adding the light of consciousness transforms the blackness within into something progressively more purified. In other words, whenever we look at the craziness that pops up out of our unconscious, thoughts of insecurities, thoughts of wanting to commit suicide, thoughts of hating other people, etc., the very act of looking at it changes it. And it is no longer unconscious. You might be damn shocked when you see, oh my God, I have the urge to do this or to say this, or I would never tell anybody about this thought or feeling in my head. Well, by looking at it, you say, wow, there's that tendency in me. And now when it rises up, I can be conscious of it and I can work with it. And I have many tools I teach in Spirit Gym to teach people how to effectively engage a transformation process so that we can not only heal what's in our unconscious, but transform every negative we find into a potential positive. There's as much gold as there is darkness in the unconscious, because everything that we identify that's a self-limiting belief or behavior, or a belief or behavior that negates the value of life or others, if transformed, becomes a form of liberation that gives us more capacity for love and freedom. This year, as we each commit ourselves to the work of the hermit, it's important to recognize that love manifests at 3 levels of expression: I, we, and all. First, we have to love ourselves, because we can't carry more into a relationship with another than we have for ourselves. It's impossible. And what we do at the we level contributes to the all, or the whole, of humanity and life itself. As the hermit, we each need to be clear as to what our dream is, which is our I-ness, for expressing our soul's genius and highest self in the world. We are each faced with the reality of the world, the severity of our global situation, and our contributions to it. As individuals, we now have the opportunity in each moment to ask ourselves, what would love do now? What would love do now if they try throwing another pandemic at us? What will we do now when we watch countries bombing the living hell out of each other? What do we do when we have the chance to tell the truth, but it might cause others to resent us or to attack us, but we know in our heart we're telling the truth? That is the spiritual warrior. The outer and inner of ourselves revolve around the axle of the soul, and spirit is what brings us self-realization. True spiritual development brings us into our center so that we are not pushed around by the polarities, but we are in a place where we can observe them and hold the tension of the opposites and wait until we can act with the question in our mind, what would love do now? What is best for everybody involved, not just me? What am I willing to sacrifice? Any true warrior has to know what they're willing to live or die for. And if we don't get clear on that right now, we're probably going to face a lot more death because we've been passive and allowed it to happen. At the we level, we can each meditate on and witness how we engage relationships within our daily hermit practices and in self-reflection at the end of each day. With our dream for ourselves and those we share relationships with, we can choose to be more empathetic and compassionate with those that challenge us. Whenever we feel challenged in relationship, we can use our heart to feel what we know and act accordingly, even if it requires calling a timeout and just simply saying, I need to step away right now because I can't stay connected with you at the heart. Could we resume this discussion later when we can stay heart-centered together so that something meaningful can come out of it? When we do act from our heart, we bring more love and harmony into each of our relationships, and that makes it easier for us to get through the challenges that are inevitable in the world. With each step we make in polishing the mirror of the heart, we're more capable of loving ourselves and bringing the light of that love into our relationships. As we add love into our relationships, that love spreads to all the relationships we share, and a ripple effect permeates the world, increasing the love and consciousness across the globe. And research I've seen by experts says that it only takes about 2 million people sharing a common dream, goal, or intention to create a level of coherence that is stronger than the energy of 6 or 7 billion people who are acting in a state of chaos and confusion or decoherence. So the great news is, from a scientific perspective, it really only takes about 2 million of us with a common dream to support life in each other to create a global shift in consciousness. None of us is perfect, but if we each just improve 1% a day on any aspect of our lives, within 100 days, we're 100% improved. And that's not a big ask. 1% a day isn't a lot. Now, when we look at a way we can each practice on a daily basis, a simple model we can use either in the moment when situations arise or at the end of the day as a review of our day before we go to bed, we can remember that in the myth of Lucifer, which created the matrix so God could have self-reflection, because without a material matrix within which there's a sense of individuality, God cannot know itself, because God as a unity can't know there's no other to God. God is that for which there is no other. Therefore, in the myth of Lucifer, God asked the highest angel, the most powerful being in God's own creation, to create a matrix for God's own self-reflection. If we don't have self-reflection, we cannot know ourselves. So the myth says, and as it is depicted in tarot, that Lucifer uses the elements of earth, water, and fire, and air to create the matrix within which we have free will, choice. Metaphorically speaking, God doesn't want us to love God like a blow-up doll or a robot. God wants to give us the choice to love God, which is to love ourself. So within Lucifer's matrix of self-reflection, we have the influence of fire, which in tarot is the wands suite, which relates to our use of power and relationships. How are we using power? Are we insinuating our power and controlling others, or manipulating such that they do things they don't want to do for our benefit? That would be one small example. The air element, representing swords in tarot, has the negative expression of seeking attention and validation externally or at the expense of others, or by creating illusions or using manipulation, such as Edward Bernays' methods of marketing and common marketing tactics that we're all familiar with. That's the negative use of the air element to trick people instead of marketing effectively. To market effectively, you simply tell the truth attractively, but you don't lie and cheat and trick. So in our nightly review or our daily review or momentary review with regard to the air element, we could ask ourselves, am I creating what I want with my mind? Am I creating what is ultimately an expression of my heart, my love, and my dream? Or am I creating something that negates others, limits others, and categorizes others as less than? Or am I using my mind to seek attention and validation outside of myself because I'm not doing the work of loving and respecting myself as a unique expression of source? At the water element, love and relationships and the responsibility of love. And we can ask ourselves, are we loving ourselves and others in ways that create freedom, or are we binding people in relationships? Are we expecting someone else to pleasure us sexually and keep us happy? Or are we taking that responsibility onto ourselves in relationship and sharing love because we have love to share, not because we're needy and codependent, which is the way children express love because they don't know any better. So simply looking at how we're relating in our love relationships and intimate relationships is the work of the hermit, and we can do that on a daily basis or a moment-to-moment basis. And finally, we have the earth element, which means, what are we doing with the natural resources of this planet? What are we doing with our money? The earth element relates directly to money in tarot and in the concept of the matrix. So are we using our money in ways that is helping bring harmony to the world or destroying the world? Are we paying attention to the fact that we don't really have a political system that works, but that the only real vote we have is with our dollar? Every time you buy commercially raised food, you're funding the disrespectful and disgusting farming of animals in very inhumane conditions. you're funding the poisoning of the planet. If you read Edward O. Wilson's book, The Future of Life, it gives you a very shocking accounting of just how many of the species of nature we've largely destroyed through these very things I've been talking about. And remember, that is the building blocks that support life. We can't live without those creatures. We can't live without the birds, the bees, the flowers, the trees, the microorganisms. So when the hermit looks into the earth element from the concept of this daily review, we have to say, what did we fund with our money? And is it helping heal the planet or destroy it? Is it bringing us into harmonious relationships with businesses and people that are doing good for the world or not? So in summary, what I'm saying here is that if you don't have time to go off into the desert metaphorically and isolate yourself in a 10, 20, 30-day meditation retreat, you can do your daily review and look at how you're using power, how you're using your mind, how you're using love, and how you're using money and resources, and ask yourself from the perspective of the heart, am I living in ways that's creating solutions and bringing us toward harmony, or am I caught in old habit patterns that have been programmed into me and are actually contributing to the destruction of life? These are super, super important questions. So as we, the hermit, hold the vision of humanity within ourselves, among each other, and between humanity and nature in 2025, love-based coherence emerges. We realize that we all need and love each other in nature and begin using our technology for healing. With this inspiration, that I founded Spirit Gym and produced the 15-volume Spirit Gym book series. You are welcome to download my PDF summary of the 15-volume book series by clicking the link in the show notes. And I believe it's a 24-page document that summarizes the principles that I teach in Spirit Gym and gives you a sample of exactly what I'm doing my very best to support those that want guidance from me and others that have devoted their lives to spiritual development and higher education, to support you in your own spiritual development and work with a group of people that are truly committed to being the change the world needs now. There's over 200 in the program now, and they're truly amazing people, and we've been having a lot of great experiences. I started the program June the 1st, and it's just doing amazingly well, and I'm very grateful for each of you that are in Spirit Gym that might be hearing my voice right now, so thank you for growing with me. With greater heart coherence, we begin acting from our heart, and as a wise man once said, only the heart can deliver justice to the head.
Hi, everyone. Like Paul said, my name is Julie Dean Richards, and I am the astrological attorney. I am so excited to start you off this year with my 2025 astrology forecast for the year. This is a big year. We are looking at some major shifts. And personally, I have been calling this year the year of shifts. We have 5 outer planets that will be moving into new signs. Now, I want to explain this really quick so people can understand the impact of movement like this. Some of these signs, such as Pluto, stay in their sign for over 20 years. So these planets, they tend to be slow moving. And when planets are slow moving, it means that when they shift into a new energy, it really shifts all of us. It shifts our world, it shifts our culture, and it shows where we are going as a society. So these are really important to pay attention to. And this year, we have 5 planets that will be shifting into new signs, some of which they have not been in this sign for over 200 years. Planets like Pluto and Neptune take over 100 years to do the whole cycle. So when a big shift of 5 planets is happening, we need to pay attention to it because it means that overarchingly this year, we are moving into something new. Now, I know that Paul has talked to you about the 9 and the year being a 9, and things, letting go and the death and rebirth cycle, I would say that this reflects that as well. With a death, there always comes something new. And that's kind of what we're looking at. So let's start with Pluto in Aquarius, because this shift has already happened. Many people are talking about this shift, and you've probably heard about it before. But on November 19th of last year, 2024, we had Pluto shift into Aquarius. Now, Pluto has been shifting in and out of Aquarius and Capricorn for a while, but it is fully into Aquarius now. It is not going to leave for another 20 years. So this is kind of the generation. We're going to have generational shifts as Pluto is in Aquarius. Pluto is the planet of death and rebirth, and we see that aligning with the year 9 this year. But when Pluto goes into Aquarius, which although it sounds like a water sign, is actually an air sign, we're getting a lot of shifts in our thought, in our cultural thoughts, in our movement. We want to think about the quality of air. Air is light, it's bright, it moves quickly. Air is about thinking, our headspace, it's cerebral, it's our logic. It's also technology, and Aquarius has been correlated with technology for a long time. And so Pluto, death and rebirth, moving into the sign of thought and technology is showing us that there's going to be major shifts in technology, likely with the innovations brought to us by AI. And we will have these huge societal shifts where we're going from looking to one leader, which is more like the opposite of Aquarius, Leo. Leo is that one shining leader, to looking to many different leaders, many different thought leaders, many different ways coming through. Aquarius likes to do things its own way. And so now we're entering this age where people are going to start doing things their own way. And it's less about that one big authority and more about your own internal authority and thought. Now, a lot of people have been worried about this because it mirrors what was happening when America was formed. The last time we had Pluto in Aquarius was during the American Revolution. And Aquarius is revolutionary. It's revolutionary thought. And during that time, we were taking the power from a king, very literally, that Leo energy, that one shining king, and bringing it into the hands of more people. Maybe not all people, but more people, right? More people than had ever before been able to make decisions about themselves started to make decisions. We're going to see that again. We're going to see this idea of we're putting the power back into the hands of the people. Now, of course, because Pluto is a slow moving planet, this transformation will take time. But I would expect things like innovations, technologies to speed up rather quickly during this time. I would expect thought processes to speed up. Old thoughts are going to die. So the old way of doing things are going to die. I think this is a reflection of, the singular media entity that we had dying, right? We don't have that anymore. Now we're listening to podcasts like Paul's podcast. We're listening to divergent media. We have our own way of doing things, and more people are getting tapped into more of an Aquarian energy, which is very humanitarian. We're thinking about society as a whole. My caution about Pluto in Aquarius is that Aquarius can be rather cold or objectifying, right? And it's very important to look at, are we objectifying other people? Are we so focused on our own self and the way that we want things to go that we are objectifying others who are not doing these things that we are doing? Are we looking at other people's ways as bad? So that's something to think about. And of course, there's going to be a lot of this going on with the sphere of technology and AI. Is AI objectifying people? Is it taking away people's uniqueness? Now, Aquarius is very unique, but in a shadow form, it can feel dull. It can feel like everybody else. It can amass things. And it's very disconnected, right? Are we being disconnected by media? So those are some of my predictions and some of the feelings around Pluto and Aquarius, which has already happened, and that shift will just get stronger and stronger. One last thing on that, Aquarius is the water bearer. Aquarius is the water bearer, which reminds me a lot of the woman at the well and this idea of bringing water back to the people. And water is that very fluid, feminine energy that oftentimes we need. We need more of in our society. And so I would say, hopefully, Pluto in Aquarius is the rebirth of a more balanced masculine and feminine society where we're bringing back the feminine to the places she needs to be. We're bringing other people water. Let's talk about Uranus moving into Gemini. It starts July 7th, 2025. Now, Uranus, similar to Pluto and all of these planets, as you can see, will be shifting in and out of these signs for the first little bit. Uranus takes around 10 years to go through a sign, 8 to 10 years. And so shifting into Gemini, we're shifting into another air sign. Okay. So again, logic, travel, looking at things from both sides. Uranus, though, unlike Pluto, is not about death. Uranus is about suddenness. It's about breaking things up. It's about a fresh view. It's about innovation. And when Uranus goes into Gemini, it's going to be supported by Pluto. Pluto's going to be sending Uranus a trine because Pluto is also in an air sign. So that quality of being like an element allows Pluto to support Uranus. And so I would say this looks like rapid innovation, sudden innovation. I would also say this is sudden foreign affairs, like sudden effects on foreign affairs. Gemini is often correlated with like community, but also like on a grander scale, this travel. And so it could be a rapid change in our communities, a rapid change in our country in those ways, rapid changes in technology and in travel, right? Our ability to travel, whether or not that travel is just with our mind or that travel is a physical travel, that's going to be really sudden shifts, breaking things up. Now, Gemini is known for having two sides to it. Sometimes people say that Geminis are two-faced, and really what they're doing is they're looking at both sides of the coin, and they are both sides of the coin. And so I would say that we're going to see both sides of Uranus this year. We are going to see the side of Uranus that is innovation and being true to yourself and, being very lively and authentic and not caring what other people think. And we're also going to see the other side of Uranus, which is breaking things, right? Things being broken up, breaking stuff down. And that can be painful. And so just watch for the unexpected. Now, there have been a lot of people talking about this, and I should also bring it up that the last time Uranus was in Gemini, if you think about it, if it takes Uranus about 10 years, 8 to 10 years to go through one sign, and there's 12 signs, then it takes about 120 years for Uranus to go through all the signs. I mean, it's a little less than that, but so it's been a while since Uranus has been in Gemini, but when we look back, right, 100 years or so, and we see the last times that Uranus has been in Gemini, we often see war when this happens. We often see unrest when this happens because Gemini, with that thought and with that two-facedness, and Uranus bringing us, excitement and suddenness and breaking things down and bursting out, can bring, the thought of war, right? It can bring on these thoughts and broken alliances and things like that. So we did see Uranus in the revolution in Gemini. We also saw at the beginning of in World War II, we saw Gemini, Uranus and Gemini, and we also saw, I believe, you'll have to check me on this, during the Civil War, we see Uranus and Gemini. So we've seen it that when Uranus goes into Gemini, we see that war can break out. And there are some signs of that in the astrology that could happen. We're already talking about foreign wars a lot. There's already conflict going on. This could be an echo or a reflection of that. I hope that it's not war. I hope that, this is more of a war of words, but it is something to be aware of, that it's possible. It's possible that towards the end, the midpoint and the end of this year, we might be seeing, really going into that space of war. Then we've also got Neptune moving into Aries. Neptune has been in its home sign of Pisces in this really lovely watery place. And Neptune has to do with delusion, illusions, spirituality, and thought. But Neptune also is about culture. What's happening with the culture. And this will start on March 30th. And Neptune will stay in the sign of Aries this year until October 22nd, 2025, where it will kind of bounce back into Pisces for a little bit. And it'll rock back into Pisces or rock back into Aries in 2026. So it will go back in to Aries. Now, Neptune is very watery as well as being part of spirituality, culture. It has this element of doing things to the physical water on the earth. And so we might see some waterborne illness coming up this year during this time. That has happened when Neptune is in Aries. We have seen sickness, especially when it's accompanied by Saturn. Saturn and Neptune together can be waterborne illnesses. When I'm thinking about this, I am thinking about the microplastic situation that has been more brought to light. It's been going on forever, obviously, but it's been more brought to light recently. I would just be careful of what is in your water. It's interesting that RFK Jr. has been talking about taking fluoride out of the water, and maybe someone might retaliate because of that. I'm not sure, but I hope it's not illness, but it's something to be aware of. And yes, Neptune takes about 112 years or 144 years to go through the zodiac. The last time Neptune was in Aries was the start and the kickoff of the Civil War. So that's worth mentioning because of the Uranus and Gemini. And so there may be some civil unrest because of that. We may be looking at, some upheaval. But I would also say we want to be careful because this could be illusionary, right? Whatever is happening could be an illusion, and it could be more about culture. It could be a culture war. When I'm looking at this kind of stuff, I'm wondering if we're headed more into a Cold War rather than taking up actual arms. We could also be looking at maybe just big, giant cultural shifts from this. And then, of course, we have to look at this connection from Neptune to Pluto, which can also bring this idea of what is real, what is false, the death and rebirth of what is real and what is false. And when Neptune meets Saturn, which it will multiple times this year, as Saturn will also be moving into Aries, when these two planets meet, there's a lot about what is real and what is false as far as information goes. What information is real? What information is false? And so we are looking at what is going on, and I think a lot of this could have to do with AI. Can you tell that those AI pictures are real or are they false? Is this fake news? Is it real news? Is it misinformation? Is it just people wanting to cover up true information? So we've seen this before, right? We've seen some of these themes because Saturn has actually been chasing Neptune the past 4 years while we've been dealing with everything that's been going on. So they've been chasing each other around the zodiac. And so this idea of what is real and what is false, and can you distinguish reality, will be very, very important. Something else I want to put a plug in for with Neptune and Aries is this idea of taking your spiritual health seriously. Aries is the body. And so with Neptune and Aries, I think we're going to see that your spiritual health really determines your physical health. Not that it doesn't always, but that your spiritual practice will have a greater weight on your physical being. We're going to have a lot of the physical being affected by the spiritual this year, and kind of blurred lines between the spiritual and the physical. Now, moving on to Saturn, same thing. Saturn is our reality check. He is the one who, lets us know, like, hey, no, this is the way that it's done. He's kind of the father figure of the zodiac, and he's very karmatic. What you sow, ye shall reap. That's very much Saturn. And so Saturn in Aries is, what have you been doing with your body and yourself? And take yourself seriously, right? Take your body seriously, take your health seriously. Let's get a reality check on ourselves. And he's going to be in Aries the same time as Neptune. As I said, they'll be conjunct. That means two planets will come together. They will be conjunct Saturn will enter Aries May 24th, and he will stay there until September 1st, 2025, and he'll come back in 2026 as well. He's kind of dancing, and we will see that we might feel some restriction physically. There might be some physical restriction, like I said, possibility of a sweep of illness. I would just be very careful and really prepare your body and your mind and to be strong-minded, right? That is really what all of this is asking for to get through to the other side, is being strong-minded, being grounded, and helping yourself learn how to discern what is real and what is false, and really listen to your gut feelings, right? Aries is very instinctual, and we really have to get back into our bodies and listen to what our bodies have to say. And this is going to be a real push to do that, to get back into what your body has to say. Then lastly, this year, Jupiter has been in Gemini, which is another part of this very big innovation, expanding travel, expanding information. That's what Jupiter's been doing. Jupiter's job is to expand things. He's quite generous, but he's going to move in June. He will move into Cancer, right? This is the idea. Cancer is the idea of home, family, motherhood, and the divine mother, very much our deep roots. And so Jupiter actually is what's called exalted in Cancer, which means he loves it. It's literally his favorite place to be in the zodiac. He loves it there and he expands there. He can feel a lot. Now, Jupiter can be overly indulgent. And so watching our overindulgence and maybe our emotional overindulgence, right? Because Cancer is about those deep emotions and, maybe too much, worrying about too much. But it's really a great sign of this year is focused on family, right? On family, on your deep roots, on your connection. This is great to do ancestral work this year. This is putting the focus on our home and our tribes. Now, that being said, this could amplify tribalism, make people more tribal. Oh, you're not on my team, therefore I don't like you, right? My team's the best team, right? My political party is the best political party. My tribe is the best tribe. So be careful of that. I worry a little bit of having an overindulgence and tribalism, and that contributing to possible civil unrest and us fighting with each other. Now, we have some really fascinating configurations this year I want to touch on. August 11th, I would really mark that time. The beginning of August will be really vital. From about the 7th until the 15th will be really lovely, because Jupiter and Venus, who are the two benefics, or kind of the two good guys in the zodiac, will be meeting up with each other. And when they meet, man, good stuff happens. We really like that, because Venus is all about money, relationships, love, and Jupiter is that expansion and thought patterns and learning. And he just is very generous. And so this could be generous money, a good time to be able to get money. Be careful about overspending during this time, because that can happen when they come together. Too much indulgence, too much overspending. But this lovely Jupiter-Venus conjunction is a great time to do things with any businesses you have, to, try to obtain more of your wealth, whether that be abundance from outside or abundance inside, abundance with your relationships. And this conjunction will be happening in Cancer. So again, abundant emotion and comfort and love. And so this is looking like it could be a great time for us to work on our personal abundance. We will also have around this time what's called an outer planet kite. This is really fascinating, because this configuration is basically taking a lot of these outer planets we talked about, Uranus, Pluto, Neptune, Saturn, and they're going to be working together during this time, this August time, and they will be triggered by something. And that trigger is going to be Mars. And a kite really wants to take all the information. It wants to take all our talents and gifts and use them in a really physical and practical way. And so during this time in early August, we want to be watching for what is happening to make us want to do things. We want to be watching where are we taking action, because this could be a trigger point of action for the United States in general, or for the world in general. Things moving, things pushing ahead. This is a time where those outer planets will be pinging against each other. And that's important to see. We may see some generational shifts because of this. We may see, a big movement. Like, this could be a trigger for a lot of cultural movements, or a big movement when it comes to like opposition. When we're talking about if there does happen to be conflict, whether that's domestic or foreign, this could definitely be a trigger point. Now, a kite is usually seen as better rather than worse, but it definitely triggers some action. So there's going to be some busyness going on in early August, some expansion, some big busyness. We're going to touch on that a little bit more in just a minute. Let's talk about Mars, because Mars is a key player this year. Mars is a key player. He will be retrograding. In fact, we will have major retrogrades from Mercury, Venus, and Mars this year, all three of them. That's quite rare. So this year has a lot to do with rethinking things, rethinking, introspection. This reminds me of, like, this year is about, hey, don't look before you leap, right? Don't just go and do something. Maybe it's time to reassess the way we're thinking. It's time to clear out old beliefs. It's time to clear out old ways of doing things, right? It goes along with that energy of the 9 of releasing. And this is very much like we need to release a lot of stuff. We've got old patterns. We have got to get rid of them. Now, Mars has been going retrograde quite a lot lately. His retrograde, when you listen to this, he will be in retrograde, because his retrograde starts December 7th, goes all the way to February 24th, and it leaves again in April 18th. That's when it finally ends up leaving Cancer, which is where it's been retrograding. So it's kind of, Mars is dancing between Leo and Cancer now. That energy, right? Again, Cancer is coming up again, which is this energy of our tribe, this energy of more of a feminine energy, more of an emotional energy. And Mars was in retrograde in Cancer earlier this year. Mars was in Cancer earlier in 2024 during the election time. And so those feelings of Mars and Cancer, right, are really going to come back. What you felt in October and early November, you may feel again. There may be some things coming up again. Mars does not enjoy Cancer. As much as Jupiter, we talked about Jupiter being exalted in Cancer, Mars is in its fall in Cancer. So it's the opposite. It's literally the opposite of Jupiter. It's in the worst place in the zodiac. Now, this can make you feel sluggish. If you've been having a hard time getting stuff done, if you've been held back and feeling like you're being held back, or you're feeling like there's way too much stuff to do and you just can't handle it all, that is this Mars retrograde. So the beginning of the year, you might be feeling that slowing, because you might be feeling that deep Mars and retrograde feeling. And that can be really difficult to handle. And then we have the Mars-Pluto opposition, January 1st through the 10th, and then again April 27th through May 2nd. These are really important to take a look at, because Mars and Pluto are the gods of war and the underworld. And when they oppose each other, it can be difficult. It can be internally difficult, right? We've had this opposition again when we had Mars earlier this year in that Leo place. He was opposing again Pluto right during that election time. And so those feelings are coming back. Those are coming back this year. And that Mars Pluto can make us feel like we have to choose. It's only one or the other. It can push and pull our emotions. So watch out for big emotions around anger. Watch out about just this intense transformation. Feeling like you either have to move or you have to die. And I don't mean that in necessarily literal sense, but just feeling like I either got to move it or I got to lose it. Like I got to die and be transformed. Like I either have to choose to like fight or I have to choose to surrender completely. And that's what these two are doing. We either fight or we surrender. And that will be a theme that keeps bubbling up from this year. And then lastly, I really wanted to just touch on one date, April 27th, 2025. It is the Taurus new moon. Now, this Taurus new moon is fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating because it has not only Mars and Pluto fighting with each other and with the sun. So they're fighting with our core identity. And of course, it's that fight or surrender. They've got that going on. But it has this interesting correlation between sudden events, money, relationships, and partnerships, and the things that we've committed to, and foreign affairs. It's touching on all those things, all on that one day, that new moon, the beginning, right? A beginning. And to me, this day looks like perhaps there will be an unexpected alliance made during this time. I don't know if we'll know about it because the eighth house is the house of hidden things. The eighth house is hidden from us. We might not see it, but I would not be surprised if during this time there was a hidden alliance that came to light, and it was very much about money and foreign affairs and dealing with those foreign affairs. And this could be a treaty coming together, particularly probably in DC and the East Coast. But this could be some kind of treaty coming together. This could be a newfound partnership coming together. This could be trying to stop the tension. Maybe the tension forces this new kind of alliance. I can't say for certain, but this is a big time revolving around money, revolving around our alliances and the way that we're doing things. So I think we're in for quite a ride. We're in for quite a ride. And I just want to summarize the flavor of the year to you as I'm wrapping up this segment, which is this is both new and old, right? This energy of this year is the ending of so many things and the beginning of so many things. This is where things are starting to shift. This is the year of shifts. There will be a lot going on. Take care of your body. Take care of your body. Take care of your body. I'm going to say that multiple times. Take care of your spiritual routines. Those are important. Expect innovation in technology, travel, and information to come up, and maybe sudden alliances that we did not expect. So I hope that you enjoyed this small little piece of my yearly forecast. You can find more of that on my podcast, Feminine Alchemy, or you can look me up on my website, which is astrologicalattorney.com, Instagram at the astrological attorney. Turning it back over to Paul. Thank you so much for listening.
Okay, so here we are on the final stretch of the podcast. Thank you for joining me in doing our best together to hermit this year. So I'd like to share the Spirit Gym Practitioner's Credo, which I created. You'll notice here that there are 10 lines to the Credo, and those lines correlate with these symbols, which are the principles that I teach in Spirit Gym that are absolutely essential to understand to live a holistic, spiritually based life. And they are simply titled the principle of the one, the principle of the two, all the way to the principle of the 10. A credo is a statement or a code of how we relate and practice. There's a great saying that says, never judge a man by the creed he or she professes, but by the life he or she leads. So it is not in the professing of this credo that we make progress in our own spiritual evolution. It is by the practice of the credo. So I will give you the credo, and then I will take you through and give you a brief explanation of what it means. Many of these concepts require a fair bit of training. There's 82 lessons and 75 hours of pre-recorded lessons by me that are the synthesis of the teachings in the 15-volume set. And then you have a sangha each week where I give a presentation and sometimes just answer questions on the lessons or help you deal with real life challenges in your own spiritual growth, just like I do with my private clients. So let's go through the credo and then I'll break it down for you. Beloved source or God. So source means whatever you believe is the highest source from which life emerges. You'll notice God is all caps, which means that for which there is no other. And the definitions I gave earlier versus capital G, little o, little d, which is the highest power of any belief system, which we talked about earlier in the podcast. So with that in mind, beloved God, blessed I am. In you I love. We dream together. I manifest my life with you. My challenges are opportunities. I create in harmony with the Tao. My highest self is my guide. I abide, reflect, and represent. I grow in wisdom, a gift to all. I embrace impermanence and create anew. We are safe. We are home. We are whole. A whole great spirit. It is done. It is done. It is done. Okay, so that's the credo that we start each of our Spirit Gym sanghas with to remind us what we're doing collectively as practitioners of true holistic spirituality in Spirit Gym, which is existence itself. So let's now go through and break these sections of the credo down for a slightly deeper understanding. Beloved source or God. So here you see my diagram of the Trinity of God. Now, every major world religion has a Holy Trinity, and this is a unification of the Trinities based on science and metaphysics and religion and philosophy. At the top, you see God as pure potential source, the absolute, which we discussed as big C, the divine witness, the unmoved mover, which in Taoism is Wei Wu Wei, which means action, not action, or action without action, which only God can do. And this is in Taoism, the Tao that can't be spoken. So this is the mystery of God, the mystery of the Tao. Lao Tzu says, the Tao is blacker than black, deeper than deep. It is older than God. What he means is that the source of creation is older than God because God, as it is shared in religions, is a human conception. It's an idea or an ideology, and that the Tao cannot be encapsulated by an idea or an ideology. This would be pure potential. So this is where the feminine meets the masculine, and they are in a state of neutrality, which is zero. So God as zero or source. The black side, Z negative, based on David Bohm, quantum physicist, who is probably the most enlightened of the scientists I've ever studied. There's a great documentary on his life on Amazon if you're interested. It's excellent. This is the no thing of zero. Remember, zero has two qualities: it's empty of everything and full of everything. This represents the womb of existence. In Tantra, it's Shakti, the divine mother principle, or the subject of God, the witnessing aspect, the perceptual, perceiving aspect, just like your subject is what's listening to me right now. This represents the Holy Ghost or the Holy Spirit, dimensions for which in quantum physics and other models there's many dimensions. This is Bohm's implicate order, or in Taoism this would be called Big Yin, the feminine. This is the invisible spiritual dimension that is the source of the energy and information and frequency that ultimately manifests here as that which is expressed in the hollow movement as described by David Bohm, which is creation itself. So here we have the everything of zero, the forms that create existence, the Tao that can be spoken, which is anything that can be weighed, measured, recognized, or named. This is the principle of Shiva in Tantra, the Divine Father principle, the object of God, the Sun, all material manifestations, bodies, which is Bohm's explicate order, which is Big Yang. So here we have the dreaming trinity. The symbol in the middle, which is the circle with the dot, is the divine monad, or the soul, or the consciousness within God that is dreaming all souls into existence. The space within the circle represents the womb of Shakti here. The central dot represents the Nada Bindu point, which is the origin of Shiva or Yang. Nada means sound, Bindu means seed, and point means the point of origin is so small it's infinitely small, yet has infinite capacity for expansion, growth, and development. So the divine monad is the soul of being, or the one, the oversoul of all souls. So when we say beloved source or God in Spirit Gym, we are directing our consciousness, our gratitude, our love, and our thanks and our respect toward that which is ultimately a mystery that cannot be known but only experienced. And in Spirit Gym, we practice the concept that love is the verb of God. Nouns are never the truth of God, because nouns are always things that are objectified by the mind, but the experience of love cannot be objectified, only experienced. So there's no way you can say my mother's love is worth $27 or $2 million, because that's just a metaphor, not a fact. So ultimately, we're worshiping the mystery of Source, the mystery of God, the mystery of the Tao. That way there's no fighting over God wants this or wants that. If God is God, God has everything and is everything. So a jealous God, an angry God, a vengeful God is really an idea that comes from human beings, unfortunately, that have the desire to coerce, trick, and control other human beings, which what I call corporate religion. So beloved source or God, blessed I am. Blessed I am, how amazing, what a miracle it is to be alive. In my image, you see a man sitting out on the shore on a rock, looking at the beautiful colors in the night sky. And in the background of the stars, you see the pattern of the secret, the ancient flower of life, the flower of life pattern, which is a symbol for zero. It's a geometric symbol for zero. So blessed I am means my life is a miracle, and I honor the miracle. And the miracle is powered by love and connection and creativity and good, beauty, and truth. And ultimately, we're all here to realize who and what we are. And we can look out at creation and see the magnificence of Source in its own manifestation, because the universe, multiverse, or omniverse could only be the body of God, the Creator. Therefore, we are living in, wearing, breathing, interacting with, eating, drinking, breathing God. So blessed I am. In you I love. And here we see a model created by Houston Smith from his excellent book, Forgotten Truth. Beautiful, powerful book, Forgotten Truth by Houston Smith. But what we see here is a series of rings with the world and behind a woman. And by the way, the woman in the picture is the artist Vicky Dye that does the art. Thank you, Vicky, for your love. So the infinite represents God, which is the source of spirit. That steps itself down into celestial, which is the domain of the soul, because the soul must have some form of embodiment in order to have an experience. So the unconditional spirit steps itself down into the celestial to create the matrix, or the conditions by which life and love can be experienced, within which we have mind, our ability to create, to think, to relate, to comprehend, and to make meaning, all of which we experience in the terrestrial dimension of the earth through our body. So when we say, in you I love, we are saying, in you the infinite, in you the celestial, in you the mind, and in you the body I love, without which I could not have this experience of life, love, humanity, nature, and the great I am. Line 3 is we dream together. And what I'm showing you with this diagram is Ken Wilber's 4-quadrant model. And here we see the upper left, which relates to your personal interior or the dimension of your soul, which includes thoughts, feelings, emotions, belief, your personal myth, conscious or unconscious, your dreams, and the archetypes that are acting through any one of us at any given time, which is the source of our personal story, the script we're acting out consciously or unconsciously. It's the source of our personal unconscious, our personal shadow, and the potentials within our shadow, which is the material that we've repressed because we don't want to have to confront it, be it our wounds or our judgments. And in that quadrant, we ask ourselves, what is our secret story that is stopping us from being a full manifestation of the genius within our soul? And what is our unmet task in our life so that we can evolve and become who we really are meant to be as the impulse of our soul or the entelechy within? The upper right is the personal exterior. That's where we, the dreamer, are the actor. That's the home of our ego. That's our body, our actions and behaviors. Anything that can be weighed, measured, or filmed is in this quadrant. We are a participant in the lives and dreams of many others and various roles as cast or crew. We're the star of our own myth or story, but we are also cast and crew for all others because they're also God in a process of self-realization. So this is the explicate dimension of that which is observable, can be weighed, measured, or filmed. In the lower left, we have the collective interior, and this is where the souls of our cast and crew live. So your mother, your father, your friends, your coworkers, everybody you interact with. And this is where we act out the great play or the Maya, the grand illusion. Because remember, if God is by definition unconditional, then to have something like a body or a universe is a necessary illusion. For example, if your mother is a zero, then you'd have to ask yourself, can I be real or am I virtually real? Well, if zero is no thing, something that can't be weighed, measured, or known, but is also encompassing everything, then that makes God a zero. That means everything we're living is a virtual reality because ultimately there's nothing but God here. So all illusions of separateness or individuality are a necessary vehicle for God to experience love of, with, and for itself, which it does through dreaming beings into existence and relationships which create love. And love is the basis of mind because you can't have mind without information flowing between 2 points of sentience. Computers are not sentient, so you have an information processor, but they're not sentient, which means they don't have the capacity for morals and values and ethics. They only have the capacity to trade the flow of zeros and ones as information, but they have no sentience of that. A computer will just as soon build an atomic bomb as it will build a new school to educate children or build the plans for an organic farm. So in the lower left, the collective interior, it's the soul domain of all the people we interact with as the cast and crew in our story. It's the world soul, the cosmic soul, which would be the soul of the cosmos, or the dimension from which the divine as soul comes, which is called the divine monad. And it is the dream also of our cast and crew. And here we see all the levels of the unconscious that have to exist in order for us to even be, which are aspects of our own soul. So we have a personal unconscious and shadow. We have the spirits of the food and drugs that enters our body, the spirits of the water. We have alter personalities within ourselves, which psychology speaks very clearly of. Jung calls them complexes. We have other entities within us. We have pets that we share life with. We have nature spirits, ancestors, past lives, the collective unconscious of the entire planet, the solar unconscious, the galactic, and the cosmic unconscious, which is the physiosphere plus the biosphere plus the noosphere and the theosphere combined together, and that is the implicate order. So one human being is made of all these streams of consciousness. So this is how God manifests as an individual with a spirit soul. Lower right-hand quadrant is the collective exterior. That's the world stage where we act out our individual and collective play or story or dance or create our art for the betterment of each other and the realization of who and what we really are. So in the Credo, when we say we dream together, we're actually acknowledging that no one of us is an entity in and of itself, not at any level. The soul is relationships from top to bottom, our first relationship being God itself, and then progressing downward to all that supports us so that we can have a sense of self and contribute to our own evolution and the evolution of life and in relationships. Line 4, I manifest my life with you, you being God. So we can look at this. This is 4 relates to the principle of the 4. Here we use the Kabbalah as an example. And the Kabbalah breaks down into 4 elements that step down progressively. Here at fire, you have infinite energy potential. That's big C, the divine witness. This is where God's dreaming itself. This is called the divine fire, or in alchemy. And this is the source of intuition within us. Then at the level of air, we have a condensation of God consciousness, producing mind, which is the superconscious and the unconscious simultaneously. We have complementary opposition. We have relationships. This is the imaginal dimension where we perceive things. It's the source of information and thought. That steps down to water, which is the flow of energy and information, heart connection, values and emotions, and feelings, or the subjective aspects of ourselves in life, which crystallizes itself into earth, which gives limitation, matter, things that are objective, wearable, or measurable, or filmable. It's where we're embodied as a self. We have sensation, living in formation. So the word information puts energy into formation, which is how we get manifestation. Chang Tzu says emptiness is form and form is emptiness. So there's a meditation for you. And then this is where we have our individuality, our self within unity, which has 2 levels that we've discussed earlier. The self as all that supports us, and the self as God embodied, or all that is, or Spirit Gem itself. So in Spirit Gem, when we say, I manifest my life with you, we are saying that all that exists comes from God, including myself. I live for God as God's own experience of the uniqueness of the soul that I am, and that I live with God, because there's nothing here but God. And if we can comprehend that, then we will treat life as though it is God's body. And then to the degree we realize that, we act with love towards nature and each other. So I manifest my life with you, God. Next, 5 relates to the principle of the 5, which we discussed earlier when we talked about the Hierophant and the thesis, antithesis, synthesis of Hegel. And the 5 is the challenge of the hero's journey. The world is the great spirit, the great gymnasium where we come to make ourselves strong, which is very true. So here, the principle of 5 is to remind us that all of our challenges are opportunities for growth. And if we handle them that way, and we slow down a bit, and we use our heart to feel what we know, and we ask, what would love do now? Then we're more likely to grow spiritually and have more harmony within ourselves and in our relationships. And this is where the rules for being human in Spirit Gem are very, very important. They're handed down from ancient Sanskrit, and I modified them in order to help them be more congruent for the principles of Spirit Gym. So, rules for being human. Number 1, you will receive a body. You may like it or not, but your body will be yours for life. Number 2, you will learn lessons. You enrolled yourself in a full-time school called Spirit Gym for life experience. Every day in this school, you will be given challenges and opportunities. You will have the choice to convert challenges into opportunities and grow spiritually, or ignore the lessons, inviting the pain teacher into your life. 3, growth is a process of trial and error experimentation. Failed experiments become successes if they inspire creativity and deeper connection with your soul. Trial and error provide experience that ultimately leads to wisdom and greater freedom if you participate with heart. 4, all lessons are repeated until you learn them. Avoiding life's lessons invites the pain teacher to direct awareness and quicken consciousness. How much pain is required to inspire honest participation in your life is completely up to you. Lessons learned do not end. There is no part of life that does not contain its lessons. If you are alive, there are lessons to be learned. 6, there is no better than here. When your there has become here, you will simply attain another there, and you will again look better than here. In other words, no matter what we have, we always keep seeking something better. I want a better car, a better partner, a better job, better income. But the lesson is that when we really embrace what we have, then we don't have to search so hard or leverage our happiness on something that will come next or tomorrow. I'll be happy if I have a certain amount of money. I'll be happy if I have a certain amount of sex. So the warning is there is no better than right here, right now, if we really are fully present with what we have and celebrate that. That doesn't mean we don't have the urge to grow more. It just means that we don't miss out on the opportunity present with us in each moment, or we spend our whole life chasing and never really experiencing what's right in us and around us. 7, others are merely mirrors of you. You cannot love or hate something about another person unless it reflects to you something you love or hate about yourself. That's a very deep and profound truth. 8, what you make of your life is up to you. You all have the tools and resources you need. What you do with them is up to you. The choice is yours. 9, the answers to life's questions lie inside you. To find the answers you're looking for, look through the eyes of your soul, listen to your heart, and be courageous enough to embrace the truth, and you will experience greater freedom. So these are the rules for being human in Spirit Gym, and these rules have been known for a very long time. Sanskrit is said to be the most ancient language of all languages, so that alone should tell you they've been around. I've just modified them slightly to fit the Spirit Gym teachings, but they're ultimately saying exactly what they have said in the Sanskrit with just slight contextual modifications. We see what I was referring to earlier, which is the 9-stage of a process, the 9 stages of process. Thesis, idea, goal is the first 4 stages. 5 is, and that represents the hero's departure. 5, the tip of the pyramid or the crown or the capstone, the hero's ordeal where the mentor is needed, which is our antithesis or trial stage, after which we go into a state of synthesis. That's the hero's return. The hero, metaphorically, or the hermit, comes down the mountain to share the wisdom gained with everybody that the hermit can help, to share the love and help do our best to facilitate higher consciousness in younger people and less evolved people so that their life doesn't have to be so painful. And this is inevitable, and that's why Vivekananda said the world is the great gymnasium where we come to make ourselves strong, but he meant spiritually strong, not strong in the gym, so to speak. 6, I create in harmony with the Tao. In Spirit Gym, I talk about 10 key areas that we need to put attention into and effort into in order to live a holistic spiritual life and be healthy people. Those 10 areas are relationships, our social life, the things that bring us joy, the activities and practices that are ultimately health producing, our career, acts of creativity, managing our finances, our education, our spiritual development, and our home life. That's the wheel of life. And I show my Spirit Gym practitioners how to rate themselves for participation in each one of these areas so they can identify where their growth potential lies. Next, you see the two qualities of yin and yang, and those are the two forces that create everything in existence, the light and the dark. That's the necessary duality without which we cannot have consciousness. From that emerges the four doctors, Dr. Happiness, Dr. Diet, Dr. Quiet, and Dr. Movement, within which we have 6 foundation principles, which is why it's related to principle 6. Nutrition, hydration, and sleep are the feminine principles. Breathing, thinking, and movement are the masculine principles. These are the 6 principles we teach in Chek Holistic Lifestyle Coaching, training program levels 1, 2, and 3 at progressively more advanced and comprehensive levels. So here we can see that the secret of living in harmony with the Tao, simply put, is not too much, not too little. If you look at the 10 areas I've just described, relationships, social life, joy, health, career, creativity, finances, education, spirituality, home development, too much of any one or too little of any one leads us in imbalance. Too much of a given food or too little of food in general leads to trouble. Too much water or not enough. Too much sleep or not enough. Breathing too fast or too slow. Thinking too much or too little. Moving too much or too little. All lead to imbalances that lead to visits from the pain teacher. So as simply as it can be stated, living in harmony with the Tao is not too much, not too little. 7, my highest self is my guide. Pythagoras said that the triangle is the most ancient of all the geometrical forms, and he equated the triangle shape to the soul, which you'll see more of in a minute. But our highest self is the part of us that is the perfected vision that we're ultimately trying to embody, and it is the God self. It is the seed of consciousness within us. It is the flow of energy and information from God dreaming into us that gives us the inspiration, the motivation, and the perpetual attraction to fulfill our ultimate genius and bring our gifts into the world. And it is the point of consciousness within us that is not tainted by shadow or unconscious limitation, because the highest self really sits where the superpositional state in quantum physics would be, which is the state of all possibility, yet this is the perfected expression of ourselves that we're growing into. So just as a magnet draws things towards it, our highest self is like what quantum physics would call, or what is called in chaos theory, a strange attractor. It is our potential to do better, our potential to love better, and to be more that draws us forward, which is ultimately the highest self in us as the inner vision that is either conscious or unconscious of what we're capable of. And that dreaming trinity is really a symbol that goes back to what I talked about earlier with the 4 quadrants of our soul dreaming us into existence, God dreaming us into existence, because only God can give a soul. So our soul is God individuated within us. So the 7th principle is my highest self is my guide, which means as Spirit Gym practitioners, we slow down when we need to make important decisions. We connect to our heart. And we not only ask our soul for guidance, but we ask our highest self for guidance. And there's lessons in which I teach you how to access your soul and your highest self and your unconscious, so you can differentiate these 3 aspects of the psyche and know how to work with them effectively. Principle of the 8, I abide, reflect, and represent, is the principle of the soul. Plotinus, the great metaphysician and philosopher, who is probably the most referenced philosopher and metaphysician by all scientists in the realm of quantum physics, because his insights are so profound and often match what quantum physicists have found, said that the soul has three qualities: to abide, which means to bear witness to and to always be with, which is the source of our own consciousness within us, our witnessing consciousness; to reflect, which means to have memory and to be aware of our choices and our experiences, and to have the capacity to represent ourselves in each circumstance, situation, or opportunity, especially when we've done our hermit work for the day. We've looked at our use of power, our use of love, our use of mind, our need for attention, and our use of money. We can choose to represent ourselves. In alchemy, the great work is the process that we're engaged in Spirit Gem of individuation. On the right, labeled A, you see one horse with two riders, but you can see it's the same person split in two. One represents the ego, the other represents the soul, and the horse is confused because the soul is trying to get the horse to go in one direction, but the ego keeps ignoring the impulse of the soul or the heart and trying to pull the horse in the other direction. So the great work of Spirit Gem and of alchemy is to progressively learn how to listen to our soul and our highest self, so that the ego becomes embodied within the consciousness of the soul and is a vehicle that the soul can use for life experience, like God wearing a body or a costume to gain more experience as an individual. Once we individuate in Jung's model and we have access to our unconscious and to our highest self and our soul, and we let the more evolved elements, the deeper, less programmed elements of us, the more love-oriented and God-conscious elements guide the ego, then there's only one rider on the horse, and the horse is no longer confused. And because the horse isn't confused, the horse is a symbol of freedom, then we create more freedom in our life. So the principle of 8 is a reminder that God is abiding within us as the consciousness within, and that we have the capacity to reflect, look back on our choices and our actions, and represent ourselves in a more dream affirmative way in relationship to self, others, or places or things. 9, I grow in wisdom, a gift to all. In Spirit Gem, I teach 4 life process archetypes. We're all born to a mother and a father, and we all begin life as a child. That's the child archetype. We grow up, we go through puberty, and we enter the warrior archetype, where we have to make choices. Our ego must take shape, or we have no sense of self relative to other right versus wrong, should versus shouldn't, etc. So the warrior is out in the world trying to make a way for itself and learn the things that are important so that it knows what it's really living for, because until the warrior knows what's worth living for, it doesn't know what's worth fighting for. And the dangers of being indoctrinated is that you become a pawn to a cult or a belief system, and soldiers can't even ask questions about whether or not who they're killing is actually guilty or not, or guilty of any crime, or is any real threat. So unfortunately, a lot of people join the military but don't realize they're in an indoctrination process that's no different than a cult. Eventually, if we evolve enough, we can become a king or a queen, which means we have some high degree of mastery. We have skill. We are able to make enough money to take care of ourselves. We're not codependent on mommy, daddy, or others for our existence, and that we have our own domain. And ultimately, the ego reaches maximum complexity in this archetype, and we then have to face a choice point where we either continue to live by inflating our ego and acquiring more and more and more, but we also realize that our life's gotten very complicated, and we often don't have the energy to keep inflating that ego persona every day. So we go through a second simplicity where we can move into the wise man, wise woman archetype. And that's when we become a elder, and we share our life experience, our wisdom, and our capacity for problem solving as a gift to all. And that's what grandparents are for. That's what wise elders were for in native tribes. That's what chiefs were for. Medicine men were for. That's what shaman were for. And we've lost a lot of that. So principle 9, I grow in wisdom, a gift to all, means that I as an individual in Spirit Gym am aware that I can grow through these stages of evolution to ultimately become a source of wisdom and a gift to all, to help make their life a little less painful and help them be less unconscious and make better life affirmative decisions and learn to live and love from the heart, which isn't an easy thing to do, no matter how many lifetimes you've been alive. 10, I embrace impermanence and create anew. Buddha said the only universal law is impermanence. We see the art I did for my episode 250, Lucifer, Christ, Ahriman, in which I shared Steiner's conceptions of Lucifer, Christ, and Ahriman. On the left, you see the handsome young man who represents Lucifer. Lucifer is the so-called god of illusion, the one that says, get out of the world, it's all Maya, don't participate, check out. Lucifer is a master of illusion. Lucifer ultimately has many very good qualities. Both of these have good qualities, but it's human beings that bring out the negative. Steiner says that the Luciferic influence comes through the fire and air elements into the soul of man, and the Ahrimanic, which is the machine-like, materialistic. Ahriman is responsible for the powers of crystallization. In other words, to make God's dream manifest as form. So Ahriman's key spiritual function is to take God's dream and manifest it as something tangible that can be experienced, such as universe, galaxies, stars, planets, moons, bodies, places. But Ahriman is also the deity or the being that likes to control. It's the god. Ahriman's the god of technology, the god of electricity, the god of the illusion of making life easier through technology, the god of telling half-truths, quarter-truths, and using scientific facts as propaganda to manipulate people. In other words, they're not really facts. They're just enough of the truth to trick you. For example, we wouldn't have bones without Ahriman. We wouldn't have teeth without Ahriman. We would not have a physical structure. Without Lucifer, we wouldn't have the capacity to imagine or to dream or to create necessary illusions, such as movies. Christ represents the balancing point that holds these two forms of consciousness together. So Christ is the embodiment of love. Christ does not mean Jesus the man. That's a mythical story. That's a teaching story. Christ represents Christ consciousness, which is unconditional love, which is imbued in, through, and as all things, but only through spiritual development we become aware of Christ consciousness within, and the closest you can get to that is acts of love. So the dove in the middle is symbolizing the balance force, which is also called the pivot of the Tao in Taoism. And it's one center. It's where we're not taking too much or too little, not fighting unnecessarily. It's where we actually do our very best to walk that very narrow tightrope between too much, too little, copping out, getting out, staying in, or being fixated. Ahriman likes to fixate, so fixed beliefs and fixed ideas are very Ahrimanic. So in Steiner's conception, these two forces are at play because without them, we would not evolve. Without the negative aspects of Lucifer and Ahriman, we wouldn't have to experience the ramifications of our own choices. And as Ross says in the Law of One series, there are souls that evolve through the negative path, which is service to self, where the positive path of love is service to other. So Steiner makes it very clear that without Lucifer and Ahriman to stir the pot, that we would not evolve spiritually. We would be too passive and we would just stay unconscious. So war, pandemics, thievery, manipulation, greed, conniving, trickery, those actually are all part of the divine unfolding, because that's the only way we can have free will, which is the ability to choose to love or not to love, to care or not to care, to share or not to share, to grow or not to grow. And so the negative entities come into the world and they grow in a service to self path by which they try their very best to control everything, to eradicate people that don't agree with them or try to disrupt them. They do whatever they've got to do to get their way. So the key point of Principle 10 is that for as long as human beings have existed on planet Earth, there's always been wars, famines, there's been high times, there's been feasts, there's been great growth through religion, but great destruction through religion. The mind is a great tool that can either be very helpful or very destructive. And it's very, very hard to balance the forces of consciousness. Now, these two forces represented here as Lucifer and Ahriman represent Yang. Lucifer represents Yang, or the white sphinx in tarot number 7. And Ahriman represents Yin, that which pulls into itself, which is the black sphinx in tarot 7. So the key point of this line of the Credo is that I embrace impermanence because I know that nothing lasts forever. And without time, we would not be able to have experience, because without time, everything would happen all at once and we couldn't make meaning out of anything. There would be no way we could become conscious. So I embrace impermanence and create anew is us as Spirit Gym practitioners acknowledging that don't get too attached to things because they come and go. Your riches can come and go. You can lose it in a moment. Your house can come and go, as we've seen in many instances. Your loved ones can die. So really, the one thing that is permanent is the fact that God and consciousness and love are ubiquitous wherever consciousness is, because they are actually the principles of wholeness. Real spirituality is a progressive expansion of our sphere of wholeness. So as we grow through these polarities, we grow from I loving to we loving to all loving, and we ultimately realize who and what we really are. And that's when we become a wise man or a wise woman and can share that love and influence with the world and help people through calamities and challenges without losing our center or our ability to keep things into context. And finally, we get to, we are safe, we are home, we are whole, which means we are using the power of intention to state and create our dream and what we truly desire and intend, because unconditional love always says yes. Otherwise, it would create conditions. So if you want to be a bad guy, the answer is yes. If you want to be a good lover, the answer is yes. If you want to be a thief, the answer is yes. If you want to be a school teacher that loves the kids, the answer is yes. If you want to be a school teacher that does it for money and convinces yourself it's what you got to do and do a lousy job, the answer is yes. So when we say we are safe, we are home, we are whole, we are using the power of intention to put pure potential or God into tension, which is the flow of spirit, to manifest what we truly want from our heart. Aho, great spirit. Great spirit is the totality of spirit, the totality of the flow of energy and information within God as a totality. So if God is conscious, then great spirit is the totality of God consciousness. So we're saying aho to God, the consciousness at the highest level that we can interact with. It is done, it is done, it is done means our dreams come true to the degree that we live from our heart and stay in alignment and true to our word. There you see the Sri Yantra, the symbol of zero, and God's dreaming itself into existence, represented by the fire element, and then the many masks or faces of God, which is all living beings. And then it says God is love and love is God in several different languages. On the right is Spirit Gym as a diagram. Below is the implicate order, the realm of spirit or God dreaming. which mirrors itself above in the explicate order, which would be all universes, multiverses, omniverse conceptions, many worlds conception. And so there you see that the dreaming nature of God, the implicate order, is manifesting itself through the nada bindu point or points in the hollow movement. So if you think of each of those points as a pixel, like a television screen or a plasma screen, then it is our dreaming that manifests in our reality as our life. And one of the key things of Spirit Gem training is to be more conscious of how you're using your mind and your capacity as a dreamer, or as Ram Dass, as an expression of the divine, because God says yes to everything, including pain and destruction, because it's all experience for God and it's God's own self-realization. God's not afraid to die because God cannot die. So death is what makes life valuable to us, but ultimately it's our body that dies, not our spirit or our soul, because that is the gift from God itself. And so it is done, it is done, it is done is an affirmation that God is infinite. The dotted lines extending from the corners of those cubes means what you're looking at actually goes infinitely. There's no beginning and end to God. Therefore, Spirit Gem exists no matter what level of development you're at. Even if you're a metaphorical angel or an enlightened one, you will deal with challenges at that level. If you look at dimensional models that usually go to 10 dimensions or more, even if you're a 6th density being or a 7th density being, etc., you still have to deal with the challenges of the polarities of consciousness at that level. And so Spirit Gem is a conception that says we're not just dealing with human challenges, but we're an expression of the divine, and we have to deal with the challenges that God actually gives itself for its own growth, because that's all there is. So thank you for joining me in Spirit Gem, which is existence itself. Many blessings for an amazing 2025. I really do mean that. I painted my mandala already for 2025, and it's quite mind-blowing. One of the most interesting mandalas that my soul has ever given me and painted through me. And I believe by looking at my mandala that we have a great year ahead of us, but with a lot of real deep awakening and a lot of things that we're going to have to take responsibility for, taking out of the hands of the negative polarity holders and creating systems that are more based in equality and love and respect for life on earth as a whole and for each other. And that we're now passing through the gate of our rite of passage ceremony to become spiritual adults. And we have a choice to either become spiritual adults or recycle ourselves and try again at another time, if not on this planet, on another one. And that's what free will gives us, is that right. And we are choosing individually and we're choosing collectively. So my dream is that we all manage our hermit work this year and make the world a better place for all living beings now and in the future. I'd like to say thank you to all of you. Thank you to all my Spirit Gem practitioners. Thank you to all Chek professionals worldwide. Thank you to my sponsors. Thank you to my podcast team. Thank you to all the podcast guests, past, present, and future. Thank you for all of you for joining me each day and doing the best we can do to make the world a better place for all living beings. And I hope you take advantage of the discounts that the sponsors give you. Our sponsors make excellent products. I don't offer anything that me and my family don't use and that aren't of a values match for my own standards. And you can know that the money you spend with any products you spend on the sponsors goes into supporting biodynamic farmers, organic farmers, free-range regenerative farmers, and caring for the planet and really caring for each other. I know the sponsors all very much so personally, and they're all beautiful, amazing people. And I send my love to each of the sponsors of the podcast and to all of you. I look forward to sharing something interesting and exciting with you next week. And happy 2025. Aho, Great Spirit. It is done. It is done. It is done.
I hope you enjoyed listening to Paul talking about how to thrive in 2025. If you would like to learn more about Spirit Gym, we invite you to a Spirit Gym exploration with 3 lessons that will help you awaken more love, life, and freedom. Paul guides you through 3 key concepts from his Master Key program that are simple to practice and don't take a lot of time, but can have a profound effect on your life. Head over to myspiritgym.com and sign up for the free mini course today. You can also download the Spirit Gym Master Key PDF booklet by going to bit.ly/Master Key by Paul Chek. That's bit.ly/Master Key by Paul Chek. Or you can visit the show notes page for the link, where you can also find details on all the other resources mentioned in this episode. Go to paulchek.com/podcast. Thanks to our premier sponsors, Bioptimizers, Paleo Valley, Wild Pastures, and Organifi. Without their support, this show would not be possible. Make sure you follow Paul on his social media, Instagram and TikTok at paul.chek, X at Paul Chek, and his YouTube channel, youtube.com/PaulChekLive. You can also find Julie Dean Andrews online at astrologicalattorney.com for her astrological readings and other services, and crunchylawyer.com, where she helps make the law simple for holistic families. Follow Julie on Instagram at crunchylawyer, or email her directly at hello@lyasage.co. That's hello@lylasage.co. And finally, if you enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving us a 5-star rating and a warm review on the podcast platform of your choice. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, and YouTube.